a second by Mr. Gabarsky. Comments, corrections, additions? Having heard none, can I have a voice vote to approve the minutes as submitted? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. There will be that's item 4 is public comments, not related to the public hearing this evening. So this is the first public comment. There'll be public comment for the public hearing as well. So this is a time to speak about something that's not about the zoning ordinance and the zoning map. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please feel free to come up to the podium here. Make sure the microphone is there. But this would be in regards to nothing related to the zoning ordinance or the zoning map. We'll have another public comment for that. All right. Anybody like to make a comment? Jeff, right there.
Would you like the microphone? I don't know. Maybe you guys can hear me. How you doing? My name is John Scythian. I've been in St. Charles, Hampton Hills, a long time. Where's the president? Right here. John. And that's the girl. Oh, that's the president. Is that the president? Is that the president? Where's the president? I'm just the zoning commission. Yeah. All right. It's okay. It's just a zoning commission. My public forum, right? Sure. This is not related to zoning. No, I don't listen to that.
Can you speak up a little?
As you still have no request for give the mic. I was hit in my driveway by a Hampton Hills police officer. In my driveway. Okay? This man was responding to a so-called accident, which was not there. I'm not Johnny Cash. This man was just a man, okay? This Hampton Hills, among the other people they've harassed and extorted from my insurance company, hundreds plus $1,000. So if you ever see my police car driving around, let me know, which I paid for through my insurance. This man hit me, recklessly driving, okay? I got pictures, I got measurements.
Excuse me, sir.
I'll take you to come with this quick. It was a public forum, right?
It is a public forum.
I'll be done with this real quick. Regarding this? No, it's irrelevant, right?
It's not the village board, those issues would be perfect for the village board.
No, I'm just telling these people because they're here. Okay?
This is more about the zoning commission.
I'll be done in 2 seconds. Okay? The previous police chief of police, deleted the dash cam footage over a quarter mile from the accident. And I said, I'm not judging the police officers now. But if you guys are here to make some kind of, pressing statement to these people who are just people, you make sure you press it. Okay? Because they don't run your lives. Alright? And this man hit me in my driveway, could have killed anybody else, except for the truck I was in. I'm gone. Relax. I have my moment. Alright? I just want these people to know. So if we're going to talk to these people who are, in charge, make sure that you, are more in charge than them. Any questions? Talk to me.
All right, just to be sure, this is a zoning commission, and we're just volunteers. We volunteer for this position here, and we will try to stick our topics to the zoning commission. is there anybody else that has any other topics unrelated to the public hearing comment period, which is the zoning ordinance and zoning map? I'd like to bring before the zoning commission. Just a reminder, this is not the vote for. Okay. Having heard none, I'll go to item 5, and basically just give you a brief outline of what's going on this evening and how things are going to proceed. I just have a few comments to make. We'll have a presentation of the tentative report by Mr. Jim Brown, who's a zoning and building officer. So first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate you coming out and spending your precious time to share your concerns and your comments with us. Why are we here? We're here basically because the last ordinance that was adopted by the village in 2023 had a couple of fatal flaws. One of them, it did not have a map which was meant to be attached with it. So that was a reason that we're redoing this zoning ordinance. The other one is that it was not a zoning commission that was commissioned. It's a temporary zoning commission. It was not commissioned for the last rewrite of the zoning ordinance. So we're trying to correct those additions with this commission, and we have to have a public hearing as part of that procedure. So that's why we're here tonight. All right. I believe the draft ordinance that we have, a tentative draft ordinance that we're proposing tonight or bringing forward tonight and getting comments on, is a much improved document. And I think it's not a perfect document, but it is an excellent improvement over the previous document. Our goal basically is to try to identify properties and match it with its purpose. So if we have a property, we want to match what the purpose is of that property. And that's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. More detail will be coming from Mr. Brown on that. We want to protect land. We don't want to control land. So we like to identify lands, like open space. Where is the open space? We don't want to control the open space. We just want to identify it, all right? And make sure that it uses its proper purpose. We will open up a motion to open up the public hearing, and then there'll be a time when we can actually have a call for public comment. And when you do, we'll probably bring the microphone over here once again. You have a public comment sheet. Keep that with you. When you're done speaking, just put it on the corner of the table over there. And just make sure your name's legible so we have it for the minutes. That would help us out greatly. So I appreciate that. I'll give you about 5 minutes to speak. If I can operate this properly, it'll be 5 minutes. If not, if it doesn't function properly, it doesn't work right, I'll wave at you and just say, okay, 5 minutes is up, all right? There is some comments out there, maybe a little bit of confusion. There is also, I can understand that, there is also a zoning board of appeals in the village of Camden Hills. This is not the zoning board of appeals, all right? So the zoning board of appeals works in conjunction with the planning commission, and they take individual challenges or requests for zoning variance and so forth. This is a temporary commission that has just been set up for this one document that we're doing now, the zoning ordinance and map. All right, I think that's about it. I do have, we're going to have a presentation here shortly, and then I'll just reiterate a couple of the comments about public speaking before that happens. All right, so item number 6, tentative report. Mr. Brown, can I give you the microphone?
Sure. Somebody need to swear me in?
Okay, so we're going to open up the public hearing, and that'd be item 7, to open up the public hearing for the draft zoning ordinance and the draft zoning district map. And then we'll have the presentation by Mr. Brown, and the swearing in, and then the presentation by Mr. Brown. All right, so I have a motion to convene the public hearing of the draft zoning ordinance and the draft zoning district. A motion and a second by Mr. Kopic. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries to open up the public hearing. Swearing in of all who provide testimony or evidence. There will be 2 separate swearing ins. One for the who provide the evidence will be Mr. Brown and Mr. Rooney, and then one for those who requested to speak today. Okay?
You can
stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the evidence that you shall give to the zoning commission in this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thanks. I'll just note for the record, Commissioner Attorney showed up and Liaison Johnson's here as well. So I'm going to give a presentation on what is known as the tentative report. Some of the initial remarks kind of echo what the chairman already said. There's a slide presentation. I'm going to stand over here so I can kind of use that as my notes and go along. I would prefer, I think since we have public comment afterward, that don't interrupt me, just let me run through. We tried to organize this to anticipate some of your questions, so I hope perhaps some of your questions and concerns will be assuaged by what appears in this slideshow. Okay, so next slide, please. All right. Okay, just a brief history. Kane County had its zoning ordinance in 1937. Village was formed in 2007. They used the Kane County zoning ordinance. They formally adopted the ordinance, to my understanding, in 2014. There was a process to adopt its own ordinance that continued. January 2023, the village board did pass a new ordinance, and then in December of 2023, this commission was established. Next slide. So this zoning commission, it's a state statute that governs us. As I said, it was established last year, so there's 5 commissioners, 5 voting members. We have 2 liaisons, one from the chairman of the plan commission, the other's trustee. Village attorney has been participating, as is the village administrator, and me as the secretary and building and zoning officer. Next. So the process is just an example of our agendas. We have meetings twice a month, starting in January. We took a kind of a break in the summer. We just did 1 time a month. We resumed the 2 meeting a month schedule in September, and now we have this hearing. All right. So we reviewed the 2023 ordinance. That was our starting point, because that's the current ordinance now, chapter by chapter. And then when we were kind of winding that up, we turned our attention to the zoning map. Next. And this is straight from the state statute. So the commission shall hold a hearing. That's what we're doing here tonight. This is required by state statute. And everyone who has interest in speaking will be provided the opportunity to speak. There's a 5-minute time limit. All right, next. And then what happens after this? This body that was established by the trustees is, as the chairman indicated, volunteers. It's a temporary commission. They will make a recommendation that might occur tonight. After the hearing, we'll have a discussion. They'll have a discussion. They'll vote. They'll perhaps amend or revise the draft ordinance or map. Perhaps they will continue the hearing if we can't get through tonight. They might have an additional meeting that's not a hearing where they discuss what's been presented here tonight. Maybe then they make revisions. But ultimately, there will be a recommendation to the village board to adopt the draft ordinance and map. And then the village board will discuss it, debate it, and they are the final approving authority. So what transpires here tonight, if we do make a recommendation, is solely a recommendation and moves to the village board. All right? So this presentation that I'm giving is based on what's known as a tentative report. That's required by state statute for this public hearing. We had a draft tentative report that we reviewed at our October 9th meeting and formally approved it. And here it is. It's been up online for a week or 10 days and kind of outlines what we've done and the significant changes we've made and what changes we haven't made. Next. Okay, I just want to go over a couple basics. I debated whether to put this in, and I thought it would be beneficial. The U.S. Supreme Court validated the constitutionality of zoning almost a century ago in this landmark case, Euclid versus Amber Realty. And zoning had been around for about 20 years prior to that in the United States, but this said it's constitutionally okay to do it. And really, zoning was originally established, and it's still kind of established to protect properties. and particularly single-family homes. A lot of people don't realize that that was the original purpose of zoning. There was Illinois enabling legislation that municipalities could establish a zoning ordinance, counties could establish a zoning ordinance, and essentially a zoning ordinance divides the community, the municipality, or whatever the jurisdiction is, into zoning districts. So there's a map, and then there's a text, and it regulates what goes on in each of those particular districts. All right? And I have here at red, I just want to say, really, to me, and I've been a consultant doing zoning work for about 20 years. I have a master's degree in urban planning. And really, to me, zoning attempts to strike a balance between two different threads in American history. We have one, kind of the New England village green, kind of community-based, and then we have this other thread, some geographic differences, maybe more the middle states, Kentucky, that's kind of almost like the don't tread on me, kind of libertarian, let me do with my property what I want to. And we attempt through zoning to balance that. So we try and strike a balance of allowing someone to do with their property what they want to, but in doing it in a fashion where it does not overly impact their neighbors as well. And it's there to protect, again, primarily it was set up to protect the single-family homes so that there wouldn't be a cement plant coming in and locating next to them or an auto body shop locating next to them. So that's what it's about. It's really not about just we're trying to overly regulate things or we're trying to set up situations where we can fine people, and it's really not, that's not what it's about. So that's, I think, important to keep in mind throughout this discussion this evening. Next slide. So what remains the same from the 2023 ordinance into what we have now in our draft? Next. So the zoning districts are essentially the same, right? We did not delete or add anything to those. Next. The dimensional standards for each district are essentially the same. I think we only made one change there with the farming district on the percentage of the lot that could be covered. All that, the setbacks, the maximum heights, everything else is essentially the same. Next. The articles on zoning administration, enforcement, the approval processes, nonconformities are essentially unchanged. Some wordsmithing, there were some minor changes in the approval processes, I'll cover those, but that is essentially the same from the 2023 ordinance. And then finally, I think I have one more bullet here. Oh, yeah, there is. So the chapters or articles on landscape standards, off-street parking, and signs remain virtually unchanged. There's some reorganization to get some wordsmithing, but those were left as substantially unchanged. Next. So what changed? Went through what the commission decided to change in this draft. Next. Biggest thing was the keeping of animals. To my understanding, I wasn't here for it, but this was the most controversial issue during that process from 2013 to 2022. And there were, I think, substantial changes to this. And the commission tried to keep a couple points in mind when we were evaluating these provisions. One, we wanted to ensure the health of the animals. And we acknowledge that other agencies, counties, state, play a role in that. It's just not the village doing it. In fact, in a lot of cases, the village staff doesn't really have the expertise. Two, we wanted to eliminate or mitigate any nuisances caused by those animals. There was an acknowledgement that we have relatively large lot sizes here. We have locational standards that says where you can place different things like a stable or a barn, and then we have a nuisance code as well. And then third, we wanted to mitigate any environmental damage. Again, there's other agencies that play a role in that. Nuisance code from the village plays a part. And then four, we had this belief that most animal owners, whether they own a dog or a cat or a horse, are responsible. And there are financial constraints, there are time constraints with managing the animals, and there is space constraints with where they live. And most people are going to acknowledge that and probably bump up against one of those constraints. Next. So this was from the 2023 ordinance. There were maximum numbers of animals that you could keep in various districts. Next. So we decided to do away with this. Next. And we came up with this, that on top is the 2023, and the bottom is the 2024. So a little different grouping of the animals. We have bees, chickens, equines is horses and hinnies and donkeys or whatever anyone wants to have. And the last group is barnyard animals. That includes things like goats, llamas, alpacas. Sheep are not allowed, cattle's not allowed. geese, things like that you find in a barnyard. There's a definition for that in the ordinance, for all of these in the ordinances. And you can see here where we allow this. So really when you get down to the very smallest lots, which would be like Fox Mill or some of the things that have very narrow lots, very small lot sizes, those animals like the horses and the barnyard animals from R2, R3, and R4 are not allowed. Other than that, they're allowed, and there's no set restriction on the numbers. There is a provision on taking care of the animals like chickens. You have to have so many square feet per chicken. So in that way, there's kind of a back end way into regulating the numbers. But there's no absolute number that we have in the draft ordinance. Next. All of the animal provisions, they've been kind of sprinkled about. One article called Article 8, we consolidated all of those into a new article called Article 9, Keeping of Animals. Next. Yards and setbacks was changed. I don't have a diagram for this, but the 2023 ordinance uses setbacks from the lot line, and then to place an accessory structure like a shed, you have an encroachment into that setback. Having done this for a long time, I find it kind of an awkward way. People just don't understand that. To me, it's just easier to set that you define the front yard as the distance from the lot line to the front of the house. That's your front yard. And then you prescribe what can and can't be in that front yard. Next. Accessory dwelling units, they were allowed by the 2023 ordinance as attached structures, and there were certain limitations on the attached structure size. I think for the most part we kept those, but we added in the draft that one could have a detached accessory dwelling unit. So if you want to have like a granny flat, or your school-age kid comes back from college, needs a place to live, it's intended for that. It's supposed to be for family members. That was in the 2023 ordinance as well. And you could have this over a garage, so there's size restrictions on the detached structure. Has to be, I think, at least 30 feet from the house. So there are restrictions to that. Next slide. And then to the public notice requirements. We tried to make this maybe a little more transparent. That's the next slide. But there's 3 notice requirements. So if you're going to do a zoning variance of special use, this is in state statute as well as our ordinance, you have to provide notice to the public. Mail a letter, which I think most of you got, a lot of you got for this evening. Mail a letter, newspaper notice, and then a sign on the property. And we shifted some of those responsibilities to the applicant. They were all previously done by staff. We have a very small staff here. I'm part-time. The other person in the building and zoning office is part-time. Most communities have the applicant do at least some of those responsibilities, sometimes all. So we move the mailing responsibility to the applicant. The staff still posts the sign. The staff still takes care of the newspaper. The staff provides the text of that letter that is to be mailed, as well as the addresses within 250 feet. And we also changed the dimensions on how far you have to send the letter. It used to be every property owner within 500 feet of the subject property got a letter. State statute was only 250, so we went with the state statute, 250. Next. Public notice sign, we changed this. This is in the ordinance now. I think in the interest of transparency, we're going to signs. On the left was the sign that we use now. It doesn't really say a lot. So if someone drives by, they have to call the village. Maybe they forget to call. This sign we're going to now, we use this for some hearings in August. We'll give the venue of the hearing. It's usually Village Hall. We'll give the date, time of the hearing, and then we'll give what it's about. It's a deck variation. So you see, this property here, they want a variance for a deck. Maybe you care about that, maybe you don't, but at least it tells you what it's about. If you want more information, there's still the contact number you can call the village. Next. All right, accessory structures. There was a rule, 2 accessory structures, and there's a lot of exceptions to that. And then there was some maximum sizes for the footprint of those accessory structures. This, next, we got rid of in its entirety. We rewrote this. We got rid of the 2 limit maximum. Go on, Dan. And up at the top was the previous limitations on size of those roof attached accessory structures. We loosened this up a bit. We have, again, relatively large lots. Our first attempt at this, we got the math wrong. A couple people made us aware of that. We did loosen it up, which was our intention, so we revised it, and we came up with this 2% of the lot area, or 500 square feet, whichever is greater. All right, so if you want to put up a stable, or a garage, or some other accessory structure, a shed, these are the maximum size, the footprint of all of those, the aggregate is 2% essentially. So in virtually all cases, that's more liberal than what it was. Next slide. Permitted and special use table, this is really the heart of the ordinance. This tells what can be established in each of those zoning districts. The Kane County ordinance used kind of a narrative, and you had to wade your way through all of these uses. The 2023 ordinance, I think, rightly went to a table like this, a matrix. A lot easier to read, it's a lot easier to find things and compare it. We revised this, we revised some of the definitions. There really wasn't a lot of change to this, though. The 2023 ordinance stuff, I think, was essentially intact. I'm sure someone will call out the difference here later tonight, but I think it's essentially intact. Next slide. Home-based businesses, you can have a business, you can run it out of your home with some exceptions. We kind of left that alone, although we did add a list of things that were definitely off limits and things that were definitely okay. Definitely okay. Normally like a professional office, an architect's office, professional engineer's office. Things like that are okay. The things that really might have impacts on your neighbors, like if you're running out-of-body paint shop, out of your garage with the fumes, that's not allowed. Things like that are not allowed. So that's the kind of list. I didn't put it up here, but it's essentially unchanged. I like the idea of the list because people can see and they get a sense of what's allowed and what's not. And neither of those lists is all-encompassing. It's not meant to be all-inclusive, just meant to be some examples. Next. Outdoor storage, that again we had regulations governing different things on outdoor dining, outdoor storage, etc. We combined those into one section. We really didn't change a lot. Outdoor lighting, we have a dark skies ordinance already, so we decided to, in the draft, eliminate that because it was covered twice. We'll forward, I think, a recommendation to the village board that they look at that as well. Re-examine that. Next. And then we put in the landscape chapter article a requirement for a tree preservation plan. This I felt was really absent here. The commission felt it was really absent. So if a developer comes in, they have to do a tree preservation plan. We can see what trees are out there. Maybe there's some nice oak trees or hickory trees that we want to preserve. So then we can, when we go through that plan development or special use process, which is kind of a negotiated process, we can say we want this grove of trees preserved here. This is worth preserving. So that's in the ordinance now. And then we come to the zoning map. So on the left is the 2014 zoning map. That's the last official zoning map of the village. Hasn't been updated for 10 years. On the right is a draft map that was done by the consultant. Has a date on it of April 2022. This was never formally adopted by the village, but the draft map did. There was a tremendous amount of work put into this. And it did inform our discussions for our draft map, which really served as the starting point. It's a process of just going through and trying to validate what they've done in that 2013-2022 period. There were a few things that we changed. There were a few errors of some parcels that really weren't in the village that were indicated on that map. So next slide, and then we get to our draft map. And I have 3 copies of this. If you get tired of listening to me or the proceedings tonight, there's a copy here, there's one in the back, and there's one over there. You can get up and examine it. Pick it up, feel free to pick it up and put it on the table or examine it. Don't walk around the room with it. And then I want to talk about the zoning map. Now, I assume that a lot of people are here because you got a letter and it relates to the zoning map, right? You're not here to tell us what a great job we did, right? So, the zoning map, the first thing, open space protection district, farmland protection district. These 2 districts were already established in the 2023 map. We added the phrase, the word protection to the open space district to indicate what the purpose was. Next slide. So this is the purpose, this is in the ordinance, the purpose of the open space district. I'm not going to read it out loud because I thought you can read it, but there was obviously a very strong desire by the commission to ensure that we preserve the open space that we have. Open space is township, forest preserve, Garfield Farms, the HOA, open space that's in there. Okay, it does not mean public space, it means it's just open space, doesn't have anything to do with ownership. And we wanted to also on the map identify, so we wanted to preserve and identify what that open space was. Those are the two goals. Next. So here we have, I just rattled them off, Campton Township, Forest Preserve, Great Western Trail, I think it's owned by the Forest Preserve, that's among it. HOA open space, and then others like Garfield Farm, that's what's in open space. Next.
And Gray Willows and Corin Farm as well?
Yeah, is that part of the township, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Forest Preserve. Yeah, so here, this is from Fox Mill, all right, and this is a parcel that is some type of open space, all right? It's either serves a stormwater management function, it was set aside per the annexation agreement and per a planned unit development agreement that it was not supposed to be developed, all right?
Now, you as the commission,
Yeah, we'll take comments later. So the next slide, this is from the GIS, and it shows the tax records. And then click again, and you can see down at the bottom, you're going to have a red circle come up there. And it gives legal description, and then in parentheses, it says open space, public utility, and drainage easement. So that is probably serving some type of drainage or stormwater management function. All right, next. So the Open Space Protection District, it does not alter the taxes on it. So right now, most of these are zoned plan unit development for that residential subdivision that came in. The idea is to change that to open space, to identify it and add another layer of protection. Does not alter the taxes or any other village or county regulation on that property. Next. It does not alter the ownership. Whoever owns that, it's not a land grab, it does not alter the ownership, it does not alter or affect any of the rights that the owner would have on that property or any of the responsibilities that the owner has on the property. If there's an HOA that's mowing the lawn, they're going to continue to mow the lawn. All right? Next, it does not alter a basic right of property ownership, and that is to exclude others. If that's private property, it remains private property. All right? Just a change. It's again, the idea here is to identify these things that we want to protect and want to ensure remain open. That's the purpose. Okay. Next. Commercial zoning. Moving down the list, we looked at the Wasco area. There's a couple. I wouldn't say they were really changes. You know, the King County ordinance and the 2023 ordinance, the draft ordinance. They use kind of the same districts, but they use different terminology to label those districts. So we looked at that, one or two minor changes there. We identified some properties that should have been zoned, that were zoned farm, should have been zoned business, or vice versa. Next, the planned unit development. So these residential planned unit developments, they remain the same. The 2022 draft map had looked at rezoning those to R3 or R4. We felt at this time for this commission that was a little too complicated to wade in. When you have the Fox Mill development, that includes a couple different types of commercial development. Like this area commercial allows this area commercial allows this. Then you have the residential. If the village or someone wanted to do that later, we could examine it. But we left the planned unit developments alone, with the exception of the open space. I mentioned that already. Farm to residential zone. Next. Name changes, I talked about that. And then the farm zoning, that was kind of what left over. If it's a farm, it's remaining farm zoning. So I'm going to go back to the farm to residential zoning. Okay, so we had heard from a couple sources that there were these court cases out there that somehow would limit the village's ability to rezone these subdivisions that had farm zoning to residential. And we investigated that. We hired an attorney very versed in doing such research. And what she discovered Next slide. In fact, there were 3 court cases, all very similar from about this 1980 period. And next slide. And what they really were about was there was a farm area, or farm zoning, and subdivision had been platted, and probably the developer wanted to have residential zoning on it, and he prevailed. The farm zoning was declared null and void. Next. Let's see if you want to read through that. It says, the provisions of the King County zoning ordinance, in particular the regulations applicable to property classified in the F farming district, as applied to the plaintiff's real estate, are hereby declared void and invalid. So it was just the opposite of what we heard. It was not affirming the farm zoning, it was affirming the residential zoning. All 3 of the cases. Next. So we went through, we took a look using the 2022 draft map as a basis. We're trying to validate what they had done and some of the suggestions they had made. And for the most part, we kept that. So we broke the big map up into these smaller chunks. We examined these, we took a look at their photos. We have commissioners who are from this town, are familiar with these areas. So, as we can see from that map, and from this air photo, I don't think they're in the same area, but these are residential subdivisions. They aren't farms, right? They're clearly residential areas. So the goal is to align the actual land use, the zoning with the actual land use. Next. All right. The LaSalle factors. We'll talk very briefly about this. We went through what's called the LaSalle factors. There were 2 court cases in Illinois. One dated from 1957, LaSalle Bank versus Cook County, and the other was 1960 Sinclair Pipeline versus the village of Richton, also in Cook County. And these court cases went through the appellate court to the U.S. Supreme Court. And through all of that process and those court decisions, there was, when you pull out of the text, you get what the Illinois Supreme Court used to evaluate the validity of the rezonings or zoning challenges in those 2 cases. So those have become, those about 9 or 10, depending on how you divide it up. So those have become the standard in Illinois for zoning litigation. That's case law. And a lot of municipalities have adopted these standards as their own standards for considering map amendments or rezonings. And that's what we have done. That's in the 2023 ordinance, and it's in our draft. So I'm not going to run through them all, but the commission did go through each of these standards for the areas that were being rezoned. And there's a list of all 10. I'm not going to read that next. Just going to go through a couple. So standard, I call it standard 1. It's the one that normally appears. The compatibility with the existing use and zoning of nearby property. Well, the existing use is residential. That's very clear. The rezoning is residential. So that obviously meets the standard. Next. Standard 4, the suitability of the property for the purposes for which it is presently zoned. Again, it's residential, but it's zoned farm. It's not a farm. We're trying to align it with the actual use. Next, the consistency of the proposed map amendment, that is rezoning, with the comprehensive plan and any adopted land use policies of the jurisdiction municipality. Next. So, this is our existing land use map from the village's 2012 comprehensive plan. And you can see on it, if you know where these subdivisions are, if you find yourself, it's shown as yellow, light yellow or dark yellow, which is residential. It's not shown as farm. So there was an acknowledgement in 2012 that these areas were residential. Next. This is from the comprehensive plan, chapter 3, principles, policies, and strategies. All right? The village's zoning categories include residential districts, agricultural districts, and it says these districts, however, are incompatible with current land use and should be updated to more accurately reflect existing land uses and to accomplish development goals. Next. Also, same chapter, page 72. Currently, land use and zoning in the village are not consistent, and zoning should be updated to more accurately represent existing land uses and to accomplish development goals. So this has been a goal of the village since 2012. And this matches one of those standards, the LaSalle factors for validating a rezoning. Next. This is the future land use map from the comprehensive plan, and it shows these areas as residential. That darker one is what's called conservation design. That's for future development. All right, those are areas that haven't been developed yet. And the other lighter yellow is residential. It's a future land use map, okay? And again, these are the areas that are now zoned farm, but they're actually residential that were considered rezoned. Next. Standard 8, the extent to which the proposed amendment creates or eliminates nonconformity. So if you have zoning, farm zoning on your property now, maybe you have a barn or a shed and it's in a location that is fine with that farm zoning, but now we switch it to residential zoning and maybe the setback is 5 feet different and maybe now it doesn't conform. Our look, my look, in examining this, air photos, driving around, I did not see really very few instances where there might be a nonconformity. Obviously, I didn't get out the tape measure. There's a measuring tool in GIS. I just didn't see a lot of situations where we're going to create a nonconformity. Secondly, I will say nonconformity is not the end of the world. That building or structure is allowed to continue. You don't have to file any application with the village. It's just allowed to continue. You can repair it, you can keep it in good repair. Under certain circumstances, you might be able to enlarge it. Depends on which way you're going with it or how high you want to make it. So it's not like the end of the world if you have a non-conforming shed or building on your property. But I think that's very key. I threw this in because I didn't know where else to put it. We found it odd going through the ordinance that really there was virtually no mention of barns or silos for a community like this. So this provision was put in. It talks about the importance of barns or silos for heritage. And it basically says that if there's an existing barn or silo on your property, it's going to be considered conforming. That would allow someone to obviously upkeep it, to maybe enlarge it, to maybe change the use of it. All right, so we felt that was important for the heritage. We put that in. Next. So what are the consequences of this farm to residential rezone? Property taxes, there's none. And if you don't believe me, you're going to hear from someone else tonight. Next. Setbacks. There is a minor, in one case, in one zoning district, there's a minor difference. The setback, if it's farm, it's 10, it would go to 15 feet. So if you had a shed, you could put it 10 feet from the property line. Now you have to put it 15 feet. We heard from one fellow at the October 9th meeting. He has kind of a unique case. There's always the variance that is a relief for those. But again, our look at the air photos and taking a look at this and given the size of the lots that we're rezoning and the width of the lots, this probably won't be an issue for too many people. Next. Permitted uses, there is a minor difference. I'd like to say here that again, getting back to that theme that a lot of what we're doing is to protect people. You may not understand that, but if you're zoned farm and you're in a neighborhood that's zoned farm, farming allows barbed wire fences. So do you want your neighbor putting up a barbed wire fence? And maybe you do, maybe it doesn't bother you. So there's things here that could protect you. In the old Kane County ordinance that was valid in this community to January 2023, you could have a migrant camp in a farm district. No hearing on it, permitted use, migrant camp right there. All right, that was the Kane County ordinance that was valid up until January 2023. So we tried to adjust some of these uses and make them, they're really more compatible with the existing residential use. Next. Accessory structures, minimum footprint. That didn't go by zoning district. That just went by the size as compared to the lot. It was a ratio, percentage. And that, again, it goes by the maximum, that 2% rule. So the zoning district really doesn't matter. Parking of vehicles. Here there is a difference. RV parking, it would still be allowed with some restrictions, the places you have to place it. Commercial vehicle parking, we went back and we changed this slightly. So it used to be the threshold was 3/4 ton truck, which wasn't really defined. We thought it might have been the payload. I had a slide in the previous presentation. I took it out, but I will say, when you start examining what could that possibly mean, 3/4 ton truck, payload, empty weight, curb weight, however you want to break it down, an F-150 probably would exceed it. So, I mean, is everyone who has an F-150 here in violation of our current ordinance? Maybe. So we decided to go by license plate. It's a lot easier to regulate. You just take a look at the license plate, how it's registered. And what we decided was for commercial vehicles, C and D plates are not allowed in residential areas If you have a non-commercial vehicle with a C plate, that would be allowed in a residential areas. So that would be a difference. In farm, it really wouldn't matter, so that would be a difference. Next slide. This is more for the commission. I think I can pick this up later during our discussion. There's a couple people noted some map changes, and I think that they have validity and merit, so we'll cover that. So we'll pick that up later. So that's the end of my presentation, and you can have the microphone back.
Okay, item 7C will be public comment now. We'll have the village village attorney swear in all those, I'll let him explain how he wants to do this. And then after the swearing in, I'll just give a little bit more guidance, and then procedure of how to come up and so forth, after that, right?
Okay, I won't make you all stand, but if anybody would care to speak this evening, you did not have to sign up in advance, but if you care to speak, would you please raise your right hand and repeat, or just swear or affirm. Do you swear or affirm that the comments that you shall give to the zoning commission in this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, I'm going to, I have one request for one speaker to start off tonight, and that's Mr. Alan Rotman, the township assessor. We'll have him speak first. After Mr. Rotman, I'm going to ask the people, if you want to speak, that you just get in line at your own pleasure, and just wait your turn. And then once you've spoken, if you do have one of these witness slips, or not witness slips, but just a sign-up sheet, just go ahead, please put it on the corner of the table over there, and that should suffice. All right, let's see. If I could, Mr. Rotman, I'll just bring you the microphone, and leave the microphone up there.
My name is Al Russell. I'm an assessor. My office has been receiving a lot of phone calls regarding the letters that went out, regarding how is this going to affect my property tax. I can tell you right, I can tell you right now that it will not affect your taxes at all. We do not assess based upon zoning, we assess based on use of what state law is. So if you have residential homes, you're assessed as residential property. Farm properties are assessed based on their use also, meaning that you have to be in production, you have a certain amount of acres, and this is the primary use of property. So if you're currently assessed as a residential home, this zoning change will not affect you at all. If you build something, of course, your taxes will go up, but this zoning change will not do any change to your taxes. Does anybody have any questions as far as that goes? Oh, yeah, sure.
So that doesn't affect your property value though. When you reassess something in a different zone, it affects your property value, which then could affect your taxes, correct?
Well, we do not assess based upon zoning. Well, I don't even have a zoning map in my office. I couldn't even tell you how many property is currently zoned in the township. As I said before, we do not assess on zoning, we assess on use. If you have a residential home, if you have a residential home sitting on an acre and a half, and it doesn't matter whether it's zoned F or zoned R, you have a residential home, and I'm going to compare you to what other residential homes are selling for. That is how you are assessed. So,
Thank you.
yes.
So if something is purchased before Campton Hills was existing, and it was zoned farm, and now according to your new and revised map, you want to change it to R1, are you then not taking my right away as to how I purchased my property, as to what my intentions were for land use of my property, which Kane County, I talked to them immensely before I bought this property, and they said, oh yeah, you can have horses on that property, just make sure you put up a fence before you bring them.
I am not changing the use of your property at all. I'm not even with the village, I am with the Campton Township, which is a totally different governmental entity. My office is in charge of the assessments. We are not part of the village. And the village, like I said, my office is getting a lot of phone calls regarding the letters that went out. I myself got a letter, okay? As far as my restrictions go, my restrictions are greater restricted through my HOA than anything that the village could throw on it.
Well, I moved to my property so I could get away from HOAs, and now it's almost like Campton Hills is doing it to me.
I understand, but with, what I'm saying is, the changes that they are doing here, I'm not taking into consideration, because you're assessed based on your usage, unless your usage changes, meaning,
Okay, well, my health did take a turn for the worse for a short period, so I had to eliminate having extra critters to take care of. And then when Campton started this stuff.
Alan's here as the assessor to address how your property is assessed in its tax bill. You're talking about land use, we'll get to that when you
Okay,
come up and.
but still, doesn't
This-
that go hand in hand, sir?
No,
Because-
he said it, we've said it, the land use, the zoning law, isn't taken into effect by the assessor into how your tax bill is generated.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any common sense. Does it to you guys? It's weird.
Disagree that the taxes are not gonna go up with the game they want to play. That's all he can say.
So if we could, if anybody else has got a tax question, that's what Mr. Rothman can answer.
Okay, you guarantee me my taxes will not go up any more than what they already did in my, this last tax round?
well, without knowing your specific piece of property and looking into the history, and if you got reassessed, now keep in mind 2023 was primarily a reassessment year, and there were properties that were reassessed, okay? That was based upon the changes in value. The values have been changing quite rapidly, even out here in Camden Township.
Right.
I don't know your property in particular. I don't know if you're sitting on a farm parcel or a residential parcel. I would have to address.
I bought it as farm.
Pardon? I'm sorry, what?
I bought it as a farm parcel. I could have horses. If they put me to R1,
We have a number of properties out here that you're allowed to, like Campton Equestrian Estates, 2.5 acre sites, okay? You're allowed to have horses out there.
but my house is not that 2.5 acres. I am under an acre.
You're under an acre and you have horses? Okay. That's the part where Mr. Brown talked about conforming, non-conforming, and getting to keep that use. We can talk to you offline and show you how that works, okay? But this is just taxes. I mean, if you have an acre and you have, even if you have a horse on your property, okay, then this is not gonna change how you get assessed. If you have an acre and a house on it, your primary use is as a residential property, not as a farm property. Your primary use, you'd have to have at least 5 acres in production in farm use before you get farmland assessments. Pardon?
Isn't that what you guys are saying now, but back 30 years ago, it wasn't, the wording was not like that, was it?
Well, the wording was very similar to that. It was 5 acres or more production before. They tweaked the farmland law maybe 20 years ago to three primary use. And a property that is less than 5 acres that has a residential home on it is going to be deemed the primary use as residential, but the secondary use is farm. You're not going to be getting that farmland assessment, generally speaking, if you have less than 5 acres. Unless there's no building on it and it's all farm. That would be the exception. This will not change any valuations, I can tell you right now. I took an oath when I came over here, tell the truth and nothing but the truth. This is not going to affect any assessed valuations, period. We do not assess based on zoning, we assess based on use. And unless your use changes, it is not going to change anything as far as taxes. You're more than welcome to call my office. If you have a specific issue with your property, I would recommend that you call my office. I'll tell you what, I will give you my business card, okay? And you call and make an appointment, and I will sit down and spend as much time as I need to explain your specific property, okay? And show you how things are assessed. I actually enjoy talking to the public as far as talking educating the public as far as how taxes, are assessed. Yes,
Thank you.
right.
Thank you for coming.
I've gotta get going, but I will give you my card right now. Please call my office, okay?
I am a reasonable person for most parts.
Just as a quick reminder, so we respect all people when they're speaking. We have crosstalk, it gets very difficult to understand. One person, please talk to you. Appreciate it.
Hi, yes, that's right. I'm Sharon O'Brien, and I live on the corner of Crestwood and Burlington, Crestwood Drive in Burlington. And I just wanted to say a couple of things before I get to my question. One is that even in the introductory comments, there's like an animosity that just cannot happen, I think, in these kind of meetings. Making statements like, you know, this version is so far better than the previous, and, you know, it was horrible here and horrible there. That's not right, because that document, and I'm not on anybody's side, my view differs from Mike, but we're able to talk about it and come away with, yeah, I still disagree with you. And that's fine. The previous version went through a numerous amount of public comment opportunities and meetings, and working from a blank piece of paper is much more difficult than working from someone's written document and, you know, saying, oh, that's horrible. No, that's not what this should be. We're a village, unfortunately, and I think we need to respect the work that was done all the way back to before we became a village. Now, one of the things that I noticed was that there's certain clauses in the documents that have gone out. And one of the things is that the village ordinances take precedence over what the zoning map is doing. And what's interesting about that is that we got all this work happening, okay? And yet, at the same time, there are some changes afoot, as I understand it, with regard to the ordinances. So no matter what they do with the zoning, it's not done yet, folks. The ordinances change things. And here's the other thing, is that all of this to do and all this time being spent is about, we're making these changes to, this is how you're going to get zoned. But the problem is that we've spent all this time and money to create a zoning map. Whereas if you want to know what the land use is, didn't you guys say that the taxes are based on land use? Why don't you just generate a map out of the tax system? Why all of this zoning stuff? Why create a zoning map from scratch? The land use is what we're taxed on. So why did we go through all of this? And I too bought my property being promised that I could, because it was farm zone, I could, a zone farm, I could have a horse. I've got 3/4 of an acre, and the way my property is set up, yeah, you could. I was also told that if you don't use the land for that purpose, that in time, the zoning could change and my right to have a horse would go away. Now, getting back to the woman's comment, that I would be wondering, and I'm not trying to answer your question, and I'm not trying to start a dialogue here, just food for thought. If you have set up a barn and have had in the past, have had horses, that I think is a very appropriate question for you, because I didn't hear that addressed, that, okay, if you're going from farm to residential, but you already have horses on your property, what does that mean? But here's the catch, not just with all this smoke and mirrors that's going on with the zoning, but what's happening with these changes with the village ordinances? And why are we going to pass a zoning thingy here, document, without knowing what's happening with the ordinance changes and how those are going to work together? Because guess what? The village zoning right now says that you can only have X number of chickens on a lot, of X size, but we know for a fact that that there are people in serious violation of that. The village does not go after that though. Although now we're having another opportunity for the village to go after people, but the fact of the matter is, they don't. I've got a situation where the property next to me has just decimated my property value. But they're my neighbors. And you know what? They can't do it. But the village hasn't come after them, and they don't care. So I'm a little bit confused. I was told that we don't go after anything unless it's safety related. Well, then what's all of this about? If you're not helping my property values, what is all this? If we're going to have exceptions, who gets those exceptions? So my time's up, but thank you. I hope my comments were valuable to you. But I do hope we can stop this, whatever this nastiness is. It's not nice.
Okay, good evening everybody, especially the members of the Zoning Commission, the members of the Campden Hills Village Board present. My name is Joseph Warren. I'm a Fox Mill homeowner. I'm also the Vice President of the Fox Mill Homeowners Association, and I have in the audience with me a number of my fellow board members. And we're here tonight to clarify some aspects, and I believe some of those aspects have already been clarified, but there are still some areas that I would like to ask the questions for. Fox Mill, as the map shows, has a significant open space area. In addition to the 688 homes, we have 275 acres of open space, which includes 7 lakes, 6 miles of walking paved trails, and over 1,600 trees, all of which we maintain. And my understanding tonight from what's been said is that this rezoning of the green space areas from PUD to open space will in no way change the ownership, our control, or the use of the area of the Board of Fox Mill. But one question is clear in my mind with regards to the open space. Now, I've given each member, or the majority of members on the Zoning Commission, the map of Fox Mill. Now, you will note on the map that there are 2 colours of green in the open areas. The first colour is a light green. All those light green areas are private areas for Fox Mill. They are deeded separately from the dark green areas. So the light green areas were deeded in 2009 and are owned by the association and are deemed private. The dark green areas were deeded to the association in 2012 on the premise that pedestrian access would be granted to the public. Now it should be noted that the 6 miles of trails, paved trails, which go around all areas, both coloured green areas, are granted access to the public by the association. But it's for pedestrian access only, and not necessarily for what they do on the ground. So from that perspective, obviously Fox Mill being responsible for protecting both the homeowners, our visitors, and the areas themselves have a number of rules, regulations, some of which are signposted to ensure that everybody is protected, especially our community, and more importantly, the actual aesthetic of our community and those open space areas. Now, as such, because there will be no further development from our perspective, we had no real issue in those areas being changed from PUD across to open space. And indeed, we applaud the Commission's perspective of reinforcing our commitment to our open spaces for the benefit of our residents, the community as a whole, and the environment. However, I would like to see, if it was possible, that the differentiation between the light green areas, which are private, and the dark green areas shown, because otherwise, if people see that zoning map where it's all green, they're going to assume that it's all public open space, and it's not. Alright, so I'd like to make that clear. Now, with regards to the other elements that may be happening, obviously if there are any other ramifications with regards to this, which have not been detailed clearly here tonight, we'd obviously like to understand what they are. And with that, I'm finished. If anybody's got any questions. Thank you very much.
My name is Vince Bucci. I've been in construction for over 40 years. I've done many residential homes in Lake Forest with my met. Spent 10 years on the Gold Coast, Scotty Pippen, Arrowhead, over Woodbury. These are my projects. As a project manager, as a carpenter. I moved to unincorporated St. Charles. This spring will be 20 years. I have a 21-year-old who's now in ECC, doing his pre-meds. I have another 17 to 18-year-old going to St. Charles. I was the Cub Scout Master Assistant Leader for 7 years for Pac 150 out of Moscow. So I've done my time. Hard time. When I looked at this area, it was unincorporated St. Charles. I did my homework back then, knowing the field that I'm in. I researched what I could do with property I was buying. I went to King County, reviewed their codes, planned on having my second kid out here, and when they were moving out, I was going to do what I wanted to do with my property, live in it for 2 years, and then be able to sell it and make what I'm going to bank off of it. That's not going to happen. This zoning, yes, it's going to raise our taxes, but this zoning is going to restrict anything that I previously planned for the last 20 years to do to my property. We're here talking about 5 feet distance. Now it's shrinking the building I wanted to put on my property. So it's not going to be utilized the way I wanted to. So for some reason, and Mr. Brown, your presentation was very entertaining. The way you allowed us to see the slides, but not really be able to read them. And then your sleight of hand of, this is obviously not farmland. I was looking at the parcels you had pointed off there, and I couldn't obviously tell which person was operating as farm or not. So the way you presented it to these people was very deceiving. I don't think this is going to help us. I think the way, or the reason most of us moved out here was for a lifestyle that is now going to be restricted. Because the lady that was up here at the beginning stated utilize your property in the future. Thank you very much.
It's quick, Seth Woman. I've been following this zoning commission for about 5 or 6 years. I took part in some Zoom calls through COVID and some of the last rounds, participating and speaking publicly in many letters. I would say for those that have gone through the actual ordinances, this is a drastic improvement from where it was. So I just want to thank you guys. I see more freedom, less restriction in this than maybe some interpretations here. I just want to congratulate you. Job well done. Thank you, Sean Rogers.
You all gentlemen, you got anything else? Tonight, you all do. Asking. Yeah, I got small drugs and Camden Hills and, now, you guys are a small group, okay? These are people, okay? This is Camden Hills. It's not you making decisions. Nobody, I don't believe any of you guys asked, the lady if she wanted to keep her area zone farm, or, no. You're not gonna tell me how many chickens I can have on my farm. I'll tell you what, I'm not you gentlemen. I mean, I don't know, I've been here a long time, okay? It's a simple thing. I don't bother anybody. I don't intrude on anybody. I don't make money. I've done nothing to improve the property of 2 homes in Hampton Hills. And, you guys gotta, check your, I'm not real good on, little groups making decisions for these people that are questioning. If anybody here got a question, they might want to have change, then you should change it right now. It's that simple. You're just people that work for us. You don't make decisions that are or affect these people in any derogatory way. It's good that you're up here, doing something, volunteers, I don't know how you got up there, or how it was an open forum to volunteer for this particular situation, but, you guys got, Camden Hills as their inspection program was found out through Schaumburg. I watched my neighbor who stole these farm sheds in a foot away in the middle of a pine tree forest, twisted an anchor and you almost get electrocuted because some clown told him that's not cannabis. Okay, I'm not good at that stuff. And I really appreciate, for most of the people that have a question or, you just don't make the rules. Okay, you just sit up there and you're supposed to do your job for these people. Okay? That's all I'm saying. You guys have a nice evening. And you people that speak up, you have a question, they don't understand. Okay? It's your world. It's not there. You can sit there and you can cut it out and make a rule. It's the, this is going on over there, it's great. And like you said, you don't speak down to somebody who's speaking. You're throwing up a slideshow to make sure everybody can read what's up there. I'm not real impressed with this stuff. Excuse me? Okay, that's fine. We're here to present this. Please.
Good evening. My name is Bill Muir. I am a resident in the Vital State subdivision. I'd like to talk about the wording of section 11.9A in the draft, which deals with the storage of commercial vehicles. The section reads partially, the storage or keeping of non-commercial trucks with B or C license plates is permitted. The storage or keeping of commercial trucks with C not carry a business logo, and it is not obviously different looking from other, quote, regular pickup trucks. It doesn't make sense to me to allow recreational vehicles parked in residences and not allow the vehicles towed. As I recall, the Class C license classification did not exist when we purchased our truck in 2015. So the D class was our only legal option at the time. I'd like to request that you reword section 19A to identify the storage or keeping of non-commercial trucks with B, C, or D plates be permitted, and the storage of keeping commercial trucks with C, D, or higher classifications be prohibited. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Terrell. I've already got a copy of my sign-in sheet here. First and foremost, I want to say thanks to all of you who gave your time to work on this project. Know very, very well it's not an easy path. This is now entering its 10th year. I'd like to start with the document that was sent as part of this farming and residential zoning comparison. And I'll focus in on that issue to start with. First of all, as was noted, all the limitations on the specific number, and we'll say chickens, but let's extend that across the board, have been eliminated. I heard in the presentation tonight the comment about balance of land use, respect for neighboring land use. I heard specifically about the health and welfare of the animals as being a primary concern. Yes, 120 square feet of coop, but no limitations on the number of chickens, and in this case roosters, are anywhere in the ordinance. We're going to leave that issue, not against the chickens, not against the property owner or the chickens, but without those limitations, abuses can be accommodated. Roosters, King County and those surrounding, Cave, Kendall, Will, Lake, McHenry, all in their unincorporated areas, none permit roosters on anything less than 5 acres. There is not a single municipality within those counties that allow roosters on 5 acres. I will offer and ask to this committee a document from King County that was done specifically regarding backyard chickens of 2023. I won't read the entrees, I won't read some of the conclusions, but pros and cons. Fresh eggs, pest control, producing fertilizer, helping reduce waste. Cons, waste, coop needs to be cleaned regularly, infection, possible salmonella if not practicing proper hygiene of handling. Noise, even without a rooster, chickens make noise. Sick birds, how are those handled? I can tell you from firsthand experience of complaints that have come in about rats coming from a neighbor's chicken coop. There has to be a quantification on the number to not overpopulate those on residential properties. This municipality is blessed with a great diversity of property uses, from small lots within Fox Mill on up through 5-acre residentials and farmland. Each should have their specific use when it comes to animals. Balance. No municipality, Elgin down to Tiny Virtual, do not, and very specifically, eliminate roosters. Barnyard animals. Barnyard says in the law. In 9 years of research, not a single incorporated community are they allowed. Barnyard implies farm. Hampton Hills is blessed with that diversity. Barnyard animals should be in a barnyard, a farm. There's a long history of research and wisdom in what the counties and the municipalities throughout greater metropolitan Chicago, we're talking 6 counties, Lake County, 5 acres. DeKalb, you don't get much more rural than DeKalb, 5-acre minimum for roosters. I will pass this on to the board on Kane County, this committee. I would also ask you to go to page 4 of the recommendations and raise a number of questions. Community residents. Okay, community residents. In here, it says community residents large, permitted across the board on residential districts. Next line item down, community residents, small, it requires a special use. Why would a small community residential application require special use, but a large residence, same property, requires to be automatically approved? Community gardens. Why is this not an open space? If you're in a resident and your neighbor decides to start a community garden, think of the traffic implications up and down the street. Same thing on nature reserves and parks. Is it done? May I just have 30 seconds? Because I'm here. I'm voting maybe there. All right. I just ask you to reconsider these items as you look through the inconsistencies where permitted and special use are. Thank you.
Hello, I'm going to be loud. So my husband and I moved here in 2020. We did our research at the county level through the GIS maps, which were incorrect. We thought we were zoned farm. After we moved in, our neighbors told us we were not unincorporated, we were in Campton Hills, we were not farm. The Kane County maps were wrong. I was just as worried as everybody here. But as I got more interested in figuring out during the last zoning process, Mike Carroll, who was just up here, was our ex-president, who ran the process. It was not like this. It was nerve-wracking. People were terrified they were going to lose their lifestyles. They were doing comparables to towns that don't compare to Hampton Hills. We're completely non-comparable too. Mike Carroll and his administration, they were trying to compare us to Bartlett and South Barrington, among others, Sleepy Hollow, where you can't even have a shed or a fence. So, and he's again trying to compare to others. I really much as an animal lover and owner and someone that has really dived into the community over the last 3.5 years, representing the animal owners, this new ordinance is night and day difference. It is no more arbitrary calculations. There are still limits within reason. Your lot limits you. Birds have 10 square feet. You know, you can't have unlimited. You have to work away from your septic field. They have also liberated the amount of outbuildings you can have. You're no longer allowed just 2. And the percentage of square footage is much higher. So I actually didn't even plan to speak tonight because I had nothing negative to say. I mean, I could pick apart a couple details in the ordinance, but that's really for the trustees to do at their level. But I really felt motivated to say something, and I was one of the biggest voices against this process the last time. This is a night and day difference, and I urge you to actually read it. Please read the ordinance and look at the old ordinance. It's so much better.
Good evening, my name is Norbert Jadrusiak. I live on the corner of Empire Road and Briarwood Drive. I'd like to touch on the point of the commercial vehicle parking. I know it's not only myself, but I'm a heavy equipment mechanic that requires me to take a service truck home every day, and that is pleaded as an H, so
We received a grant for this process before I left office in 2015, and this is the culmination of finally getting to that point. And just for the record, this was the 14th ordinance, I looked it up, we passed as a village in 2007. The ordinance number was 0714, so that's why I think you thought it was in 2015. I just went through and made a few notes as the presentation was happening, and these are some of the things that came to my mind. On your chart about the permitted and special uses, I didn't see the PUD category. So does that mean the PUDs are restricted by what was in their original PUD ordinance? So that was one thing that hit me. Another was, I'm grateful that you put a tree preservation plan in. You know, that was a goal from years ago. And so I'm glad that we did that. I also wondered in that ordinance or in that section if you referred to the green infrastructure plan, because we have that, and I assume you did it. Another one was on the open space protection district. I believe you show the Wasco spray fields as open space, which they are, but in the definition of allowances, you didn't use that as one of your definitions, and you probably ought to add that if you're going to keep it as a designation. And I couldn't tell, but on the map when you were giving the highlights of what you went through, you said something about the Wasco Business District, and I was wondering if you referred to the 22712 Wasco Town Center plan when you reviewed that, because there was a lot of time, and I think that was another one we had a grant for that helped us with that area. And let's see, I think that's it. Thanks again, I appreciate it. And I hope people understand that when we incorporated, we did adopt the Kane County ordinance as a reference. And the reason we did that was because we were dealing with a lot of development pressure from outside communities, and as long as you had an ordinance in place and a comprehensive land use in place, you had more control over what could happen in the 1.5 miles outside of the village border. So that's why it was more important to do something as quick as we could, and the quickest thing to do was to adopt the zoning that was in place before the incorporation took place. And everybody should know, if they didn't, but all the people involved on village boards and plan commissions have always known this was not good, because we had things happening on the land that didn't match what was on the map, because Kane County, for whatever reason, had never cleaned it up. So it was left to the village to clean it up. And again, there were so many things we needed to do those first few years. This kept getting pushed to the back burner, and it's a very laborious process. And about the blending, that's a good point for me. You try to be the moderate in the middle, where you're trying to allow as much uses as you can on your property without causing a nuisance to your next door neighbor. And that is not an easy thing for this board or this commission and the board to do. So I hope that what I have found over the years is if you're reasonable, you'll bring your concern to somebody in a position of power and knowledge. They will explain whatever's going on in your particular situation and try to help you understand or solve the problem. And one of the things you should do, I agree, you should try to force yourself to read. It's a long document. You know, this isn't over. This is the public hearing. Try to really look at, especially the areas that concern you. We've heard several of those tonight. And bring your comments to the board. But it might help them if you would address them to Mr. Brown or the administrator, Mr. Rooney, before whenever this is going to go in front of the board. And I think you'll find they will try to help you. But clearly, not only will your property taxes not change because of the zoning, but you also need to, because I don't know how many of you have moved here recently or don't understand, but we're in a tax cap, P-TEL County. We have a 0 tax levy in Campton Hills. There is no way there can be a tax unless the people by referendum approve one. So try to keep these things in mind as you hear these things, and try to get someone to explain it or ask somebody to help you, because a lot of the hard things, or when a lot of bad rumors get started without, now, the comments about the de-license, those are valid points that have been brought up, and maybe there can be exceptions or something, you know, that we're, because I think you'll find they'll want to be reasonable. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chuck Phillips. I've been a resident of Fox Mill for 24 years. And my comment is a little bit more about the details behind the zoning. My biggest fear is that a mega subdivision like Fox Mill doesn't have, once they get classified as open space, as a zoning, that they won't have the flexibility to use that space in an evolving way. You know, Fox Mill was designed to be a golf course as well, and they decided to not do that. So it is exceptional with the amount of open space it has, but you know, over 24 years that I've lived there, it's evolved, and there's different needs. There may need to be a pool put in one place, or a clubhouse put on that same open space. So and I'm being a little parochial about this because there is so much space, and at some point, I want it to turn out like, you know, Geneva's downtown district, where you have to jump through 20 hoops to get anything done with any historical property. So I just want to make sure that we're really cautious about the ordinances that we put on the zoning, and that we're very deliberate about trying to keep that as open as possible where you can possibly do that. And you know, in closing, I had a good friend of mine who passed away just recently. His name was Dexter Norton from Norton Lakes, and his property. Now this is farm, so I'm moving from the residential to the farm zoning. But his property evolved dramatically over 100 years through multiple generations. And if he couldn't have evolved it the way he needed to, he would have gone out of business. And the final resting place is that it's now Norton Lakes, which was what he intended, you know, overall. So I just want to make that comment. The devil is in the details on the zoning, and I just want this committee and the city government to be very conscious about putting restrictions on that zoning so they're not flexible enough to move forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Sean Simons. I live on off the Briarwood Drive. We're going to be changed to R1. I wrote a couple notes here. Basically, when all this stuff first started, we moved here in 2016 when we heard about like the zoning and all the zoning and basically the restructure of the zoning and everything. We were pretty upset to the point where we brought like our two under two here and everything like that, and had crying the whole time. I want to say that you guys have made a lot of progress on it. I mean, obviously, we're down 3 trustees from the last time, but you have made a lot of progress on it. A couple things I just want to bring up before, obviously, we get too far down the road with this. A lot of people, everyone here, I assume, has boats, RVs, snowmobile trailers, a lot of this stuff, right? I know we didn't really touch base on that stuff a lot tonight. I know that's going to be coming up in like future meetings and stuff. We iron that down and everything, okay? Couple things I want to bring up. Some of the stuff we're talking about where you have to have it on the side or like behind a structure or behind like a mound or things like that, right? You say like our property taxes aren't going to go up and things like that, but if you're forcing people to build a structure to accommodate the, you know, boats, RVs, stuff we like to do in our free time, that's obviously going to make taxes go up and things like that, for like building any structure. And all I'm asking is maybe just like a little more lax on that. Like if it's in your front yard and it's like parked up against your garage almost and stuff like that, I don't think anybody around here would have a problem with that. A lot of us got toys and things like that, right? Another thing I want to touch on, like Corbett said, I to make a living, basically working as a mechanic and stuff like that. I do think you have to make some sort of amendment about having like an H plate in your driveway if it's for work, if you're on call and you have to go to work and things like that. Some of us have no choice to be on call all the time, right? So, you know, that's just part of the career choices that we made, but it's nice living here where we have that option where we can just get in our truck and go to work. Also too, a lot of the lots are being like bought up around me, okay, and like somebody just clear cut trees down and just left it. Like I said, I'm zoned at R1. I guess more clarity on if somebody were to buy a lot, right, and it's zoned R1, and say it's an acre, how many houses are they allowed to build on that? You know what I'm saying? Like, it says like 300 square feet or more, but like how many houses per acre? 4, 1, 2, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of lots are getting bought up. Obviously, people have the intention of developing them. So, something to think about. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jane Holly. I'm up here on behalf of the Lake Hampton Property Owners Association as the president. And so I wanted to thank you for all the work you've done. It sounds like a huge, huge job. And so I just wanted to tell you that there's appreciation for that. So I had some specific things when I looked at the map. And so we have 2 access lots and a dam in our Property Owners Association, and one of them is marked as residential. So I don't know if that was an oversight. I will follow up with you to make sure that you have that documented, because we would like to have that changed so they're all the same. And then when the gentleman was talking about the open space property in Fox Mill, I know that it's all marked as dark green, is that correct? Now, is the light green, was that also open space, but it was private, correct? Right. Okay, so then that would be the other concern that I would have. The things that are currently the dam and the one access lot that's currently marked are in dark green, which then kind of tells me that they're open to the public. They are not. Those are private properties. And so perhaps those need to be changed so they're a different designation of color, so one doesn't have the assumption that it is public property. The last thing I wanted to mention is, and I actually wanted kind of a question. So there are some properties that are actually in what we call Whitney Woods, which is the far east and south part of our Property Owners Association, and those are in that like light tan, which I think they're like RE1 or RE2. So I need to know how I understand. It makes me think from what was said today that those properties could be further subdivided, and I'm not sure how I would get that information. Okay, so then I'll put that in my letter as well. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Tomaszewski. I live here in Fox Mill. I'm on the HOA board as well, but I speak tonight on behalf of being a resident. My view and opinions are all here. I just wanted, because I showed up, I'm not going to reiterate everything that Joe said, because Joe's on the head as far as what I feel as well as far as the open space and how it's classified and how the dark green versus the light green means something to us at Fox Mill. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything to you, but if we have to change that, or we need to have more dialogue on that. I know that you guys have recently, I don't know who on the committee here has been, but Jen Lehman is our property manager at First Service. I think you have her email info at fox-mill.com. I know she's been in contact probably recently as today, but we just want to make sure that the dialogue is kept open. And again, to Joseph's point, that if there are clarities or things that are beyond
questions regarding to usage of the open space, right? And if you allow me, please, to have some flexibility, because first, we don't have a playground in Boston, right? Would that prevent us from having a playground? Would that prevent us from use the land in some way? It would not be detrimental to the open space, but how can we make that clear and transparent? The other aspect, which is a little bit interesting, is that we are allowing people to run businesses from their house, but we're not allowing them to have the vehicle that they need to do business. So some clarity and some thought on that note might be helpful as well. Because otherwise, how do you allow someone to run a business from their home and not allowing them to have a vehicle that they will need? If you think about contractors, in fact, what we were talking here today, to not actually properly run their business because they can't have their vehicle that they need to for their livelihood. But again, thank you very much for all your work. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having this discussion. Thank you very much.
I'll keep this short and sweet. My name is Bill Davis. I am from Abbey Glen subdivision, that tiny little speck at Boca and Baker, surrounded by the metropolises of Prairie Lakes and Fox Mill. And to be fair, my wife and I, we moved here from the city. We were born and raised in the city. And when I hear zoning change, I think developer, and I think someone wants to make money. Well, I just can't help myself. I'm from the 606. I saw on the slides that there's a possible, and I get it, most of the discussion was land use and what to do with private property and all that sort of stuff, and I get that, I respect those arguments. I would need more clarity on these possible changes from like farmland into residential. Because when I go from farm to residential, I'm thinking more houses, I'm thinking more congestion, I'm thinking more kids, more schools. And maybe I just don't get it, one of those kind of things, but that is a concern that I have as a 25-year resident in this fine community. So, hope you take that into consideration.
Hi everybody, I'm Kelly Hornacek. I've actually been here for 40 years. We have horse and farm property. We live at the top end of Lake Campton, and we have horses, haven't had horses, had horses, haven't had horses. It comes and goes, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody stays home. And food shortages, and all kinds of other things, and you start learning different things to do, and I'm like, I got 5 acres. I'm gonna start, there hasn't been in any literature, and believe me, I have painstakingly sat and read all 118 pages of the first draft, all 97 pages of the next one, and all 84 pages of the following. And not one mention of homesteading. And those people that have taken on the homesteading lifestyle that they choose to have. And it requires, you farm, but you don't farm on a grand scale. I have a 1 acre garden. That's big, but it's not a farm garden. I'm not farming with a giant tractor, but it allows me, my farm designation allows me to do that. I have chickens, I have geese. Now here's the other side of the step. I do 4-H. I started the first 4-H club here in Campton Hills, with the Campton Clovers, because there are a lot of homesteaders that have their animals, have their kids, they run this type of lifestyle, and they're not just, you eat some, you work some, but some of these are also the kids' projects. It is an education part of their growth and how we affect the community, how the kids learn how to interact not only with nature and animals and wildlife, but how it all interacts with each other. So in all of this zoning and rezoning, and it's not I get that, and you said it very well, because that's the whole thing, and that was one of my whole points, is, yeah, you do this now, but it's what comes in the back door afterwards that is, you're leaving the back door wide open for skunk to show up on the porch, really. And then that's gonna change the whole game, and you can, you're all volunteers, I'm a volunteer, everybody's a volunteer. It's just, you can't make any certainty, but you can stop it before it gets too far. And when there's no designation on anything specific, other than, well, we're gonna take it away, and we're gonna make it this. Well, when you look into changing from farm to residential, now I'm residential, now I can't even have my acre garden. I have my garden, I have fruit trees, I have, well, because the complaint is, actually, yes, because I looked into some of the other variances on some of the other things, well, this brings bugs, or that needs, and I'm like, I don't spray, I mean, there's an argument to everything. There's just not enough clear designation on the changes from some things to the other. That leaves a little bit too much gray area. That's my only point on certain things, that people have gone from way back when to how people are doing things now.
My name is Dave Rediger, and I grew up in a little town called Wasco, which has become now Campton Hills. So, on Burlington Road, live off of Burlington Road, and one of the concerns that I have is the fact that, from what I understand, a C non-commercial plate and a D non-commercial plate were allowed, or are allowed now, and that would be changed to only a C non-commercial plate to be allowed. And I would strongly say that if I have a D plate, which I'm planning to get on a vehicle, which is totally non-commercial, that I would like to not have to find another place to have it rather than at my house. Okay? And when the initial presentation was being given, it says our purpose, the Campton Hills were saying, our purpose is not to control. Well, that would be, to me, a very big control. And it is a control. And it's something that I would not welcome. Something that is uncharacteristic of what I've lived and known about for years and years and years, and I'm not just 22 years of age right now. Also, the question would be, and I don't know what the current stance is as far as if you have a boat on a trailer, or if you have a trailer, or if you have an RV and you don't have the current license. Now, in a number of towns, that if a neighbor sees a person's vehicle there and it doesn't have a current sticker on it, they can call the inspection person, and the inspection person can come and cite that person and fine them because they don't have a current valid plate on that. That's something that, again, if a person is maintaining their property, the vehicles are being maintained and so forth, being able to have a neighbor swat another neighbor or somebody else because of maybe a disagreement or something else, I don't think that would be right. But also, somebody was talking about the setback. Many cities have gone from a 5-foot setback or side yard setback to a 10-foot setback, and now Campton Hills wants to go from a 10-foot to a 15-foot, which to somebody that has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 acres may not be a big deal. If you have only 1 acre or less, it does become a big deal because now you have less of a building to be able to put on that smaller piece of property. So I would also ask, if I can, nothing was said about the back setback. Is there is it 5 feet or 10 feet for the back setback? Not a side yard, but the back. What is the current setback for the back? Can I ask somebody here? Does anybody know? Okay, but And I would also recommend that when a presentation is being made here, like what was made earlier, you guys are able to talk and we can ask a quick question, but then when I am up here and willing to give part of my 5 minutes to hear an answer back, that would just be really, really helpful. Because during the time the person was mentioning the side yard, I could have said, well, is there a back setback, which would allow me to give a more knowledgeable presentation. So I would just make that as a recommendation. I do appreciate everybody's effort here. I know a lot of people. I mean, you don't get paid. This is all voluntary. So that's so I can tell you thank you for your efforts on this. I know you are trying to do what's best, and it's tough to please everybody. But these are my comments here, and I appreciate this area, and I appreciate the people that have come here and the interest that everybody has, and again for the efforts that you have here.
Good evening. My name is Paul Mayer. I live up off of Town Hall Road, up by the microwave towers up there. This will be quick. As I was listening to the presentation tonight, there were a number of, it went very quickly, by the way, and very difficult to follow. But what I did notice was this was mentioned 2 times. And what was mentioned was we're doing this and this and this in order to accomplish our development goals. That kind of worried me. You know, the first thing that came into my head was Charles Farm. And I'm going, oh my God, what are they talking about? And I know it's not going to be Charles Farm. What are our development goals? What are we looking at going into the future? I've been here for 41 years, moved in here in '83, and we moved here because it's rural, it's farming, and we raised our family. They left, they came back, they left, and we're still here, my wife and myself. And it's a wonderful area because it's rural and it has an environment and atmosphere that we just absolutely love. So I'm concerned about development happening around us. I'm in an area where you can't develop around me, but I feel for the rest, for the rest of us here, I don't want to see a lot of development. So I'd like to know the answer to that. Accomplish what development goals? What are the development goals? It's the only question I had. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm Jerry Johnson. I am the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission. And normally I wouldn't come up and mention, because technically I've already had my say when we made recommendations. And the Zoning Commission here, I think, has done a very thorough job and such, and I appreciate all their efforts because I know how much time goes into this kind of thing. But the one thing I am concerned about in light of the Charles Farm, which is the proposal that St. Charles annexed everything from south of 38 all the way to Harvard Road, and we fortunately had a great turnout of people to express concerns about that, and there are other factors involved too, but St. Charles turned down that annexation. That's the 3rd time we've had to deal with St. Charles possibly annexing in the south end of our neighborhood. The one point that I have concern with here, and I understand it from a work position, from how much work it takes. In the 2023 ordinance, it was a zoning ordinance that was passed. There was a provision that everybody within 500 feet of whatever zoning change was being proposed would be notified. The current proposal with this is knocking it down to 250. Now, first of all, in Camden Township in general, we have large properties, and 500 feet is not that big a distance, especially if there's a piece of open space between you and the zoning change that's being proposed. Secondly, my own experience on the Zoning Board of Appeals is that because of that provision, just the other day, we had a proposal come in asking for a variance to allow for a change in a PUD situation. And 500 feet, people were notified, and this was in Foxborough. And so we had 2 people that came forward and expressed their concerns about the proposed change. But on the flip side, We also know that there were a lot of households that must have gotten those letters based on that 500 feet. So the fact that we as a zoning board of appeals had not heard from any more than those handful of citizens, that gave us some acknowledgement that, well, apparently, yes, individuals had concerns about things, but apparently the community as a whole in that immediate radius was not concerned. So getting information out to people is the hardest thing, and that's what we found because of the proposed annexation south of Campton Hills here, that the big thing was just getting the word out to people. And having been involved in fighting many developments here over the last 50 years, it's really critical to be able to inform everybody of anything that happens that is changing like that. So that would be my suggestion. And thank you very much. And again, thank you for all your help and work.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak this evening?
I get myself in trouble, so.
If not, for the motion to close the public hearing. Yes.
Mike,
Would you like to?
yeah, I believe I had submitted a comment to be read by an official.
Okay, yes, there's some, for the mic. Yeah, I'll have to look at it too, but you never read this. You'll read them into the record. Yeah, like we can do it. Yeah, sure. There's no one else to speak, you can do that.
Excellent, thank you.
Let everyone speak now.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak?
Will mine be read also?
Probably.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to speak?
I don't have a presentation, I just have a question. My question is, I'm just concerned about the development. Can you, someone just answer, is there any plans for apartments that ever go up in this Campton Hills? I need to know that, I'm just curious. I don't know.
No.
I hope I'm moving.
So it's still a public comment here, but the short answer is no.
Okay.
So.
I can sleep now, thank you.
Yeah. So, would you state your question?
Sure, my question is.
Did you just come here?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So my question is, I've been out in Campton Hills for 23 years. I was born and raised in Chicago, and part of my life was in Elmhurst, then it was Glen Ellen, or Lombard, then Glen Ellen, now Campton Hills. I've raised both my boys the rest of their lives out here, and it's the best choice we ever made. And we've been out here for 23 years, and I'm off on Briarwood and Longacre. We love our area, we love our neighbors. My biggest concern with what's going on in the world today is that the infrastructure change and buildings go up to support other individuals, maybe from the city, that I don't want to see, that will put apartments out here. Let's just say apartments. We have no crime in Campton Hills, I feel, because we have no apartments. You go to Randall Road, sometimes you see some crime, you hear about it, you read about it. But if we ever have apartments out here, I feel we might have a problem, as other cities do. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen. That's all.
Anybody else wants to speak? Otherwise, we'll have Mr. Brown read into the record the public comments, the comments that were sent.
So I have three public comments to read. I'll read them in their entirety. I'll note that the emails were forwarded to the zoning commissioners this morning, about 9 o'clock. I can't remember if I sent a subsequent one that was an email. They did not ask to be read into the public hearing. There were some questions and then people that requested specifically that it be read. So, without any particular order, zoning commission, this is from Kate Foster. Zoning commissioners, board members, elected officials. My name is Kate Foster. I own the property at 6 North 932 Crestwood Drive. This area is under current review of rezoning from F farm to R1 residential. The legal definition of a farm denotes a tract of land devoted in part, at least, to cultivation for agricultural purposes without reference to its extent or to the tenure by which it is held. Our property is currently used for agricultural purposes. In 2020, I created Sunnymead Farms as a form of self-sustainability and to promote future prosperity states. These areas are based on available planning level GIS information and should be used as a guideline to ensure the preservation of the community's natural resources. In the natural resources evaluation zone states, quote, any development proposed within the natural resource evaluation zone should take into consideration the impact on these resources, end of quote. If these areas are rezoned residential, then it will be harder to protect them from future development. The Village of Campton Hills Comprehensive Plan, July 2012, lists village principle and policies to address these issues, stating high-quality agricultural land that is irreplaceable and should be preserved, protected, and sustainably managed to support food and crop production, livestock, equestrian uses, and other agricultural products, as well as to preserve rural character. This plan continues with policy statements that serve as guideline tenets, for example. 1, agricultural land uses, structures, and resources are significant natural and cultural, economic, and scenic assets to the community worthy of preservation and support. 2, future development, land use change, and transportation improvement decisions will consider the impact of development on farmland and agricultural uses in order to protect open space, encourage the production of food and other agricultural products, preserve scenic and rural character, and support the local agricultural economy. This list continues, and I encourage you to read all of these policy statements regarding this issue. To protect the agricultural integrity of the land, zoning laws usually limit or prohibit non-agricultural uses such as residential subdivisions, commercial developments, and industrial activities. Agricultural zoning can help protect the environment by maintaining open spaces, reducing urban sprawl, and preserving wildlife habitats. Sustainable farming practices through zoning regulations can also contribute to soil health, water equality, and biodiversity. Agricultural zoning plays a vital role in preserving farmland, supporting sustainable agriculture, and maintaining rural communities. As urbanization continues to expand, the importance of agricultural zoning and safeguarding our food supply and environment cannot be overstated. Campton Hills has one of the highest concentrations of private wells in Illinois. When the well is dry, we know the worth of water, Benjamin Franklin. This quote is in the Village Comprehensive Plan and also stated as 1, clean water, abundant supply of groundwater is a valuable finite natural resource, worthy of protection, sensible use, and conscious recharge. Further development, land use change, and transportation improvement decisions will consider the impact of development on wastewater treatment and water supply capacity of existing facilities and sources in order to ensure adequate quantity and quality for existing and future residences. This is a true watershed moment. If the farm zone is rezoned to residential, it will begin a process of irreversible development in our area, which will result in a negative impact on our local resources. Private wells running dry and wells being drilled to record depths is real. The recent drought and universally low reservoir levels should serve as a stark warning to our residents. Conserve. For these reasons and many more, we kindly request that our property remain zone farm as to not create unnecessary hardship upon our family, neighbors, and the community. Please consider our request. Sincerely, Kate Foster. Second, this is from Andrea Fonsack. And, well, the email, I'm sorry, it's signed Andrea and Andrew. To whom it may concern, our residence is located within the farming district. We are opposed to any zoning changes affecting our property. Under the currently adopted Kane County ordinance, the farming district includes F, F1, and F2, and notably does not have them written as districts, as the other districts have been defined in Appendix B and Section 7.1 classification. Due to the age of our structures, construction size of the lot, and the current agricultural uses, our property would be classified as F1, but regardless, it does not fall under one district, which is farm, as stated in the ordinance's text. Within the adopted ordinance, Article 8, Farming District, Section 8.2-3, condition for rezoning, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall not recommend a rezoning to this zone district classification unless the applicant shall present clear and convincing evidence to the Zoning Board of Appeals that the property sought to be rezoned is not suitable for agricultural use. Simply put, the property owners within the farming district may not be rezoned upon appeal unless it is proven by the owner that it shall be. The conditions for rezoning text was written to actually make it harder to rezone the farm district and preserve agricultural integrity. Within the adopted ordinance section 8.2-1, the Kane County Board has established and adopted as a long-range goal the preservation of prime agricultural land and has implemented the long range goal through the adoption of a comprehensive plan and a zoning ordinance. Camden Hills must now follow this comprehensive plan through its adoption of Kane County's ordinance in the text herein. As posted on the Village of Camden Hills website, quote, residents of the Village of Camden Hills wish to maintain the semi-rural quality of their environment and its associated lifestyle, end of quote. We should be able to keep our farm zoning and abide by the long-term goal as stated within the ordinance. Thank you, Andrea and Andy. Okay. And lastly, this was, I'll state this was email exchange with Eric Foster. There were some questions, and I asked for a clarification. I said, is this what you want me to read? And he said, yeah, I understand there's time constraints. Read the 2 sections I had pulled out, and then he added another paragraph. So, I'll start from the original email. What I believe was mutually agreed upon, and I know that the entire text of the ordinance was forwarded to the commissioners. Public comment. The proposed zoning map appears to reflect spot zoning in multiple areas, and the community should be made aware of this. There has been no developmental change in our proposed area for decades, including any fire hydrants, upgraded storm drains, sidewalks, or even a public playground that warrant a zoning change. In fact, more local residences are utilizing their properties for agricultural needs and sustainability than in years past. Many residents in our area would prefer to remain zone farm and feel this is merely a way to impose new ordinances on lands that have not changed in over 40 years. From the subsequent email, Camden Hills original ordinance read the following. 6.1 Farming District, Section A, Purpose. The F Farming District is intended to promote and protect agricultural land. The standards of the F District are to protect and promote the continuation of farming and to protect agricultural land uses from encroachment of incompatible developments. This text was also echoed in the adopted Kane County ordinance as a long-term goal in Article 8 Farm District and needs to be examined as a means of further preservation. We thank you. Best regards, Eric Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, last opportunity to speak publicly. If anybody here would like to add any further comments concerning the zoning map or the zoning ordinance. This is not the final say on this. This is going to go to the, eventually at some time it will go to the village board and they will make the final decision. So we are just making a recommendation or not. We'll see what the commission wants to do.
I just want to say, I want to stay at. I think they do.
All right.
And I'll wait till the next one.
All right.
But
We understand your desire. I understand. All right.
Will you let us know what your recommendation is going to be?
Oh, absolutely. It'll be public. I mean, there's, it would be tonight, or it might be at another meeting. We're going to make that decision tonight, whether we vote on it tonight or not. So that will be one of the things we'll be talking about. Yeah. Yes.
My question is that there were some needed points made tonight about, for example, vehicles where people have to bring their work vehicles home and they do have the company's logo on them. We've got a couple of folks that work for Wendell, for example. And I think that
Yeah.
change needs to be made.
Okay. There's a lot of things that we're going to discuss those, and we're not just going to take a vote and say yes or no. So, but this is a public comment.
My public comment is that there was some good points raised that really require some change, given that some changes are needed.
And that's why we're having the public hearing, because we want to hear that feedback and we want to take that into account. So that's the purpose of the public hearing. So, and we're going to consider those comments, and then we're going to decide what recommendations we might consider to say, yes, we want to make those changes. We might say, no, we're not going to make those changes, but that'll be our recommendation. Okay? So that's what we will consider the comments. All right?
If you make changes, what happens? Do you send the document back out before?
We'll send it to the village board. If we make changes, it'll go to the village board.
Thank you.
Yes. And the village board, that's what goes, that's the next step, okay? All right, so, a comment that if you want to make a comment, please come to the, but this is really a comment. So this is a comment period, really, so we're gonna finish with the comments, or the back and forth question. This is really not a back and forth question. This is really to take the comments and your input. And so we'd like to now start talking about these comments that we've had and try to deliberate what we want to do as a commission. And whether we're going to continue to work it out tonight, or we're going to work at another time, and that's what we're going to try to do. So so if you have comments, that'd be great. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Comments?
Yes, I have a comment.
Could you go stand in the light, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Sarah Elliott. I live off of Campton Hills Road in the corner of Country View. There's an error on that map. There's a cornfield that's behind us that is currently zoned on there as an RE2, and it is a cornfield. There's also a 5-acre property adjacent to ours that says RE2 that is, it is 5 acres, and it is not the correct zoning. So that's my comment. If you could correct those before you publish your final map.
I know you guys heard my email that I sent, but I want to make a comment and a recommendation that you guys change this section. Kate Foster, that you guys change the setback recommendations. We have a very large front yard, bigger than our backyard, and having that setback confinement will change our plans of what we wanted to do with our property. And that would be put a greenhouse in there so that we can start growing our seeds for our garden. And so these setbacks, I just recommend that you either leave them as they are, but don't change them and make them less than what they are.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing. So moved. A motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gravasky. All those in favor to close the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is closed, and I thank everyone for coming and saying that. Now, item number 8 is the zoning commission discussion regarding the tentative report draft zoning ordinance and zoning map. You know, a lot of, it's kind of frustrating. I know you like to have a back and forth dialogue, but that's. Folks, if you want to leave, I understand that. Our meeting is not over. So if you'd like to leave, no problem. If you'd like to stay, please stay. We're going to make a few comments and having some discussion. But it makes it hard for us to do our job if everybody's having conversation in the background. So you're more than welcome to stay. But if you'd like to. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back in 5 minutes, all right?
two parcels right away on the north side and the south side. So you live on the north side.
Yes, I'm in North.
See, I'm down here.
Oh, I think now that you said it's a dump truck.
Yeah, you probably see it, the white trailer, the blue coming this way. That's lived down around that lake for 60 years. But I'm trying to figure out what this one is. So you're zoned a little bit different. So I wonder what you have on.
Oh, just because of our lot size. I'm on, my plat of survey says 0.98, just about an acre.
Okay.
So that's why I'm R1 and then you must have an acre.
Okay, you're right in here.
Yeah, right, literally, this plot away.
I hope it works out for you. For me too, you know, I don't want to do
Oh, of course. It's nice to know that the majority of the people that are here speaking to feel the same way.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad I came. I'm glad you got it. Because they were trying to do the same thing I would have thought about. But that's how they rated them. Oh, wait a minute.
R1. So that means that my lot size is less than 30,000 square feet.
Okay, and I'm getting too old.
With the fighting?
Yeah, I'm glad I came.
Yeah, I think.
Get this over, so I know, my wife is killing me. Holly? 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 Your battery's gonna go dead on this in a minute. It's got low power mode. Low power.
All right, I need a motion to read the name of T, and second.
You're welcome.
There's some people are still coming in here. I'm probably not gonna use the microphone, so I should go over here. A couple of comments I want to make that I run down, and first of all, I'm very thankful for all this
first of all, to say thank you to everyone that came tonight. Really appreciate sharing your thoughts and your concerns. The overriding goal of this commission is really to try to preserve the rights of those here. It's not to take away rights. It really is to try to preserve the rights. And we're trying to use this zoning ordinance to help preserve the rights. A couple of things. This presentation it will be on the website. There's a comment about whether it went kind of fast. I heard one comment that presentation went fast. It will be on the website for review. There was another comment that there's no quantification on the number of chickens. I would just like to say that there's a 120 square foot limitation of coops, and there's a 10 square foot limitation per chicken of coop and run. So there is a quantification on the number of chickens there. Another comment came out about PUD restrictions and whether this ordinance was going to override the PUD restrictions. That's not the case. And most likely the PUD is going most likely the PUD is going to be more restrictive. It's going to be more restrictive because it's a negotiated agreement, and that will have restrictions. The ordinance is not going to impair. One correction I did look up. There was a comment about the environmental sensitivity area. We had a comment, we had a discussion on this at the last meeting, I believe, or the one before, and I just checked the draft, and it wasn't referencing it. I recommended that we link it to the green infrastructure plan. So I believe it was on page 28, Article 5.1, Charlie. If you could add some verbiage in there about the village's green infrastructure program, that would then, I think, clean up that action there. Really, too, I have to reemphasize, we're really trying to align the uses with the zoning. So what is the property being used as? Aligning the zoning to that use. So if this is a platted subdivision that is only homes, they might have vegetable gardens in their backyard, no problem. But if it's all a bunch, it's all platted, it's homes, it's all residential, that's the use is residential, and it's farm, it's zoned farm, that's not relating to what the zoning is. So we want to say that, hey, if you have a residential neighborhood that's zoned farming, it should be rezoned to residential because that is the use, that is the current use. I would like to get to, there was one thing that we did not look at. We did not look at we looked at going from residential, farm zoning to residential, but we didn't look at properties that were zoned residential that are really farming. Yeah, so, yes, so that is one. Did you want to make a comment on something? Because my address is
Three
now.
slides. One, the one woman at the end brought up one farm field that was inadvertently put on the map that was in my memo that I sent out this morning. And here's Dan on there.
So I wanted to, during our discussion, I didn't want this part of the presentation. So there's three things that were brought to my attention that I think have merit changes to the map. One, the owner of this property has like a timber production thing. It's actually for timber production. He's involved in some, I think, USDA program. Well, yeah, right there. So, and he's surrounded by farmland. He is actually zoned residential. It's been that way for a while. His tax assessment is for farming. Doesn't show up too well in the light, but you can see where his house is to the east. That pink strip is the 100-year flood hazard zone. So his entire property is flood area. He has no interest in subdividing it. He had great difficulty building a home there if he did. So I think this has merit, and this is a case where it is zoned residential, but it's actually farm. And I told him, well, we didn't really look at that. So I think the map should be corrected, this address on McDonald Road, to go, I think it's Estate 1, it's Estate 1, RE1 to farm. I think that has merit. That's one. The second slide here is the farming property that the speaker was referring to. And this was my error in my cut and paste. I had a certain workflow. Don't need to go into details, but I did not delete this from, I should have deleted it, and I didn't, and it got sent to HR Green to map it, so they changed that PIN number, you know, they just changed it from farm to, I think, RE3. It should remain farm. That was my error. I went through, I double checked to ensure that I didn't make that error again. I don't think I did, but that's farm. She was also referring to the property to the west of this. You can see there's a house there, there's a farm field below and a farm field above, and that is zoned, I think, residential. It's zoned residential now. Again, we didn't really look at going residential to farm. That owner didn't contact me. I think for right now, we just leave it the way it is. I think the tax assessment, if I'm correct, is based on residential use. Although it's obvious that there's farm included in that property. If you go back to the previous slide, you can kind of see it. Oh, there it is. It's our RE2. So it's the big RE2 to the upper, the far left. It's zoned RE2, and there's a house there, and then to the north and south of the house that appears to be an agricultural field. It did brought it to my attention. The owner didn't say anything. Again, it can be addressed later. As we indicated previously, there's no way in the world we're going to get this map exactly perfect, so it can be addressed. The other thing is to the right of this slide, there is a property, and then two properties to the south, right, where Burlington and Coran meet. And these were to be rezoned to RE2. The two lots there to the south are under common ownership, so it really could be viewed as one zoning lot. And in fact, both the owners, all three of the two owners of those three parcels contacted me and said, hey, could you consider changing us instead of R2, which does not allow horses, which they either have or had, they go back and forth. Could you change us to RE3 or RE1? I think given that that's an island of RE2 that's surrounded by RE3, and the zoning lot would meet the minimum lot sizes. The one lot that I have highlighted would be non-conforming as to lot size, but the consequences of that are really not too great. It seems like you're questioning it. I think that's a valid request. Again, the Camiros work and my validation was based primarily on lot size, but I see now it's a zoning lot, so I think that's valid. Did I have one more? I think I've covered all three.
You covered all three.
Yeah, that's it. So those were three changes that I thought had merit, and that's it. I have other comments pertaining to. Yep.
There was another lot on Burlington, we had the automobile barn, retail.
I looked at that, but again, I just didn't quite understand. The auto barn, yeah, it's zone farm, and there is a farmland behind it. It's part of that parcel. Yeah, so it appears to be being farmed.
And it should be farm.
I think it should be, yeah. I think it should stay farm. I looked at that, so I don't know what the concern was. So I didn't think that one had a particular merit because it seemed like a mixture of uses. And it seems like there's been a recent subdivision, or maybe some tax subdivision of that lot as well. But it appeared to be farm. I drove by. I mean, I could see crops behind, and you can see it on your photo. So I'm not sure what the point was. It's zone farm, and I think we'll just leave it that way. No, I don't think so. No. I'll take a look. I'll pull up the map right now. Take a look. If it is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the assessment there. I think that's a good idea to change, as you suggested, the RE2 obviously back to farm. And the other two, I would agree with the assessment. I would probably say R1 on the last one. I would probably recommend R1. Yeah, which would still allow horses and that. So that's what those are recommendations I would make. Does anybody have any disagreement with that or not? Okay. A couple quick other things I want to just comment, and then I think I'll have a plan to go forward. One of the comments two is about, light green, dark green, open space, and private at night. So the zoning map is one color for green for all classifications of open space. So if it's private open space, if it's the township open space, if it's village, or if it's, King County, it's just one color green. So if we do have, I believe we do have a separate map, or we will have a separate map, not a zoning map, but a separate map that extensive work has gone into delineating who owns which property. And that could be something that would be added onto that map if they wanted, if we desired to add on the private. But I think it'd be best for just 1 second, best for the subdivision itself to make this available, post what is private and what is not. I think that would be their responsibility. Yes?
The light green, dark green was in reference to the Fox Mill.
Yes, yeah, but I just want that concern out there. Mine is, we don't differentiate light green and dark green. It's just green. We have one shade of green. All right. And if they should post that on their private or public, on their.
They have in the police department, Scott.
Okay, great.
We could also add something, right? Take a look up the definition, we could also add something to the definition that just says, it could be public and or private. Open space.
Okay, just put that on the definition.
On the map itself, you want us to put some on the green?
No.
In the zoning ordinance, it's all in the definition. Where it's described what open space is.
Carmen, would you be able to give words to that when we get ready to make the recommendation?
Okay. Those are the basic comments that I had. And I think there's some good points brought up today. What I'd like to do now is just have a little discussion of some of the major topics and then decide if we want to continue this discussion further or on another date, or whether we want to make recommendations with some amendments. So, Mr. Gavarski?
Yeah, I think from the input that we heard tonight and the number of people that were here, I like to have on appropriate points and the setback, the parking of the commercial, non-commercial vehicles. I wouldn't be comfortable moving forward tonight without updating to the town. Get the comments, there was emails that were sent to us as late as 4:30 this afternoon. Don't have time to take everything in. And even though there was some duplicate comments, there's a lot of things that came up. I think, it felt like there was a distrust. I don't think we took care of the HOA aspect of addressing that tonight and the role of the HOA. And one of the comments made about development, which was looked at in a couple of people's face, was us changing from farming to residential to allow maybe high density development. I think people's nerves are a little afraid. I personally would like to have some more time to review the comments and table tonight and discuss at our next meeting and be able to make a recommendation.
Okay, that's one option. I think another option would be to say, what are the big topics? And then we have an option to say, well, we could, I'm just giving options, is that we can forward the recommendation to the village board and say, and these are the outstanding, we know these are outstanding options. So that is another option.
I hear that, but then I feel like the year that we put in and we didn't do a complete job and that we're throwing it back in the village. We talked last meeting.
Well, let me give you an example. I understand what you're saying, but
Just, if there was 5 people here and one topic that came up, I wouldn't have any problem with it, but we probably have over 100 people. I'd like us to do the complete job. Instead of handing it to the village and say, we know that these are other topics. It feels to me like we're guessing about that.
all right. We know this is not going to be a perfect document. All right, it's not. You say complete. What is complete? But here's what I'm looking at. I took a list of what are the big topics out there. I don't see a tremendous number of different topics. That's my perspective. Obviously, the big one was the C&D plates, the vehicles being parked, and how much time did we spend on that? I don't know what we're going to do any differently than we did before. Yes.
Is the vehicle parking, is that covered in any other ordinance in the village?
Is there truck parking, is that in any other ordinance in the village? Yeah. No. Just in the zone.
Okay, so he said it has to be addressed in the zoning ordinance if you're going to enforce anything. Unless they adopt an ordinance specifically in the village code. So we could take that out and ask the board to address that situation, because we need to do something. I mean, maybe there's some other solutions that we can, maybe it's a permanent system or something that allows certain vehicles to park.
Well, I think what happens, you couldn't come to a consensus. I and staff recommended C place, which you guys said no, C and D are out. That was your consensus. A was it to keep C and D not allowed.
C's allowed.
Well, that was the final one, was non-commercial C was allowed, but originally it was no C, no D, and then we said, okay, well, how about we'll do clerk, non-commercial C, and no D. So we spent an enormous amount of time going back and forth, and it's at that balance, we're trying to find a balance. Yes,
And I
Chris?
think with that, we didn't even agree as unanimously.
Yes.
It was, just the majority.
Yeah.
Why we went with what we did.
Right.
If I may say
Just
something,
please.
I'll repeat what I said at the last meeting, I kind of alluded to it tonight. The Kane County ordinance and our current 2023 ordinance uses a 3/4 ton limit, whatever the meaning of that is, as the threshold for whether you can park commercial, non-commercial already. As I pointed out last week, I'm not sure how you would interpret that, but almost any, if you take a look at F-150, F-250, they're probably exceeding that 3/4, whether it's curb weight, empty weight, tear weight, payload, they're probably pretty much at that. So already, most of these trucks could be viewed as not conforming. And that's under the 2023 ordinance, for the King County ordinance. And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I think we're back and forth. I don't know. There's no good way to do it other than say, we just have people park in their driveways as long as it's not something like a box truck or a backhoe or a grader or a bulldozer.
All right.
And I understand that, and I've had like nasty battles with contractors over this, and I get it, I understand, so I don't know what the solution is. I think C&D place is the best way, it's just where we want to draw that threshold.
Should we add wording where it says for, allow for a permitted, application for a permitted use?
That was something, we have people come in, they sign up, that they're doing this now, it's non-conforming, and they can continue, but it eventually,
But should we write that into the,
Well, that was the discussion we had over and over and over.
Yeah.
Well, we don't talk about getting.
The permits was brought up.
Yeah.
It was,
Making the dirt guys in charge of that, when we want to do that.
so I,
And I think with HOAs then too, well, the city gave you the permit, so I should do it.
I don't wanna make that
HOA
call.
regulations with that.
so a quick synopsis of the 21 plus, people that have voted on today. Here's basic topics. One was a lack of enforcement. That's not really our issue. We don't enforce. Private versus public open space, talks about that. People just complain, I want to do what I want to do on my property. Okay, but that's the whole problem. You just can't do what you want to do with your property, you might affect others. We had, number 5 was about vehicles, and also the D-class that we just talked about. Number 6 was like a chicken coop with no roosters. We want to all do that for housing. And it is quantified, and if you can keep a rooster quiet, you should have it. This would be literally 5 acres. So that was what we kind of agreed with. There's some positive, let me just go through these 20, I'll let you go next, Jim, all right? The other one was about the trucks. Definition of open space, that was one that was brought. People were worried about open space in a PUD. It's really only about the zoning. It's not what we're doing in a PUD, it's just the zoning. We're just trying to protect it. It's another layer of protection notes are the storage location. I thought we went over that, but there's some concerns with it. There was, one comment was I had not heard before, which I think would be good for our future, this one about homesteading. So I thought that was a very good comment, and I thought it was something we did not address as a commission, but I think that would be good for the future next year review, which will happen at a future time by the planning commission. So that's what I would recommend, that homesteading be looked at by them. Number 17, C&D plates. There was some about the 5 acre setbacks, if they were different or not. So there were questions on setbacks. And do you have a quick answer on that one, Jim, at all? Is there a change in the setback, not the side? Is there setback? If you go from farming to residential, it was the side, the setback was 5 feet?
Yeah, and again, I think that was misunderstood. So there was, at the beginning, I said we did not change any dimensional standards. And then there's a slide in the topic of what are the potential consequences of going from F to R. And there is one zoning district, I think it's R2, where the setback, if you have farm zoning, your setback is 10 feet. And then it goes to 15 feet, but that's it.
That's just in the R2.
Right. The range, I think there was, the range of setbacks, the side yard setback, it's 15 feet for RE1, RE2, and RE3. We did not change it. And that's probably from the Kane County. For RE1, it's 15. And then you get to these much smaller lots that are 15,000 or less, R2, R3, and R4, that's 10 feet. So those did not change. And what I put up there on the slide was, I think if there were 16 lots that were rezoned from farm to R2, so they would have a consequence of going from 10 feet, I'm sorry, 10 feet, no, it's the other ones, I'm getting this backwards. So they're going from 10 to 15, just the lots that were rezoned.
But those are the smaller lots, that's...
Right, and then the rear yards are quite generous, it's 30 feet, and then it goes down to R4, it's 20 feet, there's a sliding scale. And again, those we did not touch, we did not alter those at all.
So here's what I see. I just see less than a handful of little items that we're having trouble with. And so it's really, the C&D plates is a big one. That to me was probably the one that was most commonly spoken about. And it was just, I think it was about it, not an understanding of the zoning of open space, and people were worried about, and he said, Joe, about, we're going to take over the open space, or we're going to tell them what to do. So it's a little bit more of a perception in that respect. We're not trying to tell people can't have a garden in their yard. If you have a garden, that's not what we're saying. You have a garden, have a garden. 1 acre garden, have an acre garden. That's not what we're trying to say. It's just a zoning classification. So I think, the way I look at it, there's very little to change in this current ordinance, draft ordinance, to recommend to the village board. So I would like to recommend it to the village board, that would be my preference, and then just talk about it. Say, look, we know these are problems, but we've gone over this, and we think this is the best we can come up with at this time. So that's where I'm from. I know, Joe, you preferred to spend more time at another meeting, so I would like to poll the other members and see what they would like to do. Do you have any hard, Jim?
Yeah, I just want to go over one or two comments. Holly made a comment last time, Mr. Terrell did this evening, and I forgot to actually update it. It was in the table, the community centers, it's reversed. There's the smaller one should actually be P, and the larger one should be S. That is a community center, those should be reversed. That's so if you are agreeable to that. The other zoning changes I discussed, just one more, just general comment. Again, there's always, people just don't understand, and no presentation that's limited to not more than, not less than 5 parts over 5 weeks is going to educate them. But there was a lot, I think, misunderstanding. People took the
as to our zoning, or just in general, that there was some development plans out there, or fear that vacant lots could be subdivided and we'd have apartment homes. That's just not true. There's already in place the minimum lot size, which dictates how many times you can slice a lot up. And most of ours, they're 4 acres. For RD1, it's 4 acres. RD2, 2 acres. That can't be sliced up unless there's a zoning change. We have the additional inhibitor of the septic field. So that's just a totally. I understand where they're coming from, and if you're from Chicago and you hear anything with zoning, that some developer wanted to do something, talk to the alderman, and they're going to get through. And I was part of the Chicago zoning ordinance rewrite back in 2001. I was a grad full-time intern, and I experienced that, so I know that fear. I think it's unbounded out here. Someone else made a comment on how much these vacant lots could be divided up. That's already done, and we have that control. There is this fear. Someone made a comment about. There was a quote in one of our purposes about the village's development goals. Those are expressed in the comp plan. And quite frankly, I wouldn't say we're anti-development, but that comp plan is pretty much putting the brakes on large-scale developments. There's conservation design. There's all types of guardrails in place to ensure that we don't have the type of development that we dodged with the St. Charles development. I mean, we have all types of guardrails in place.
I think we just didn't communicate.
Right, and again, that's probably more of a comp plan issue, but I understand why people might think that there's something afoot here, and some developer's going to come in, and you can't combat that, those fears. I mean, you just can't. Right, and so I wish the people were here to do a better job to hear that. Allowing the fears. Yeah. So that's I guess my only comment. Let me take one quick list and then I'll shut up. There was a question. There was a good comment about the guy kind of towards the end. He was on the board of Fox Mill about is this going to inhibit if we want to have a clubhouse? Clubhouse and these other kind of community centers are allowed in open space. We allow that basically to accommodate something the Forest Preserve or Park District may want to do. It's a special use. The owner still has to approve of it, all right? It has to be an application with the consent of the owner from the owner, and then we have the discretionary review as a special use. So it's allowed. It's not like anyone can come in and build that. So it is allowed.
I guess with that too, what Cal I was just added is, they could always ask for something to be rezoned.
Exactly, yeah.
And go through that process.
Yeah.
So just because it's owned open space, if that isn't allowed or if it's owned.
Right.
That's all it is. It's not allowed. You can always ask and come before.
Right.
And ask for something to be rezoned and go through that process.
Yeah.
Well, along your lines too, I think that's the issue we're having with the farming of the RE1s, RE2s, is they're thinking because you're not designated farming, you can't do farming-like activities, and that's not true either. So that's another bit of confusion that people have.
And I will add, and I wish they were here, I did have an email exchange with a couple of people that spoke, and I tried to explain it, and I asked them several times, I think you're misinterpreting this. What is your fear? If you could tell me what your fear is, I think it's unfounded. And I told them, I said, as you describe it, I don't think there's anything you're doing now that will be prohibited under our zoning. You can still have your vegetables, you can still have your garden, you can still have your plot, you can still give away, you can still have chickens. I understand through someone at Village Hall that they have chickens and they're afraid that that's going to be taken away. You can still have that. And I tried to explain that to them, and I asked them, I said, if there's any other fears, let me know. I might be able to answer those. So I think this just, I don't know.
Go ahead.
One thing I think we were discussing roosters. Somehow I think you got left out either out of your table or in the documentation of your ordinance somewhere there. But you talked about roosters being enforced under the nuisance ordinance. And I think that's important that get incorporated.
Yeah, okay, good.
reference the nuisance, is that what you're saying? Or you want to reference in the zoning ordinance, referencing the nuisance ordinance?
Anything that says that it will be enforced under the nuisance ordinance.
Because that added as a comment.
This one is a process comment, I mean, I've done that before, reference things. I mean, okay, is that agreeable to the commission that we?
Yeah. Sure. All right.
The other comment about that, Mr. Foster property, they're talking about adding a greenhouse.
In their front yard.
Well, we had that conversation last week, that if they have a long set, if they have a long front
It's
yard.
not that long. I looked at the map.
Well, regardless, I mean, if they have more front yard than backyard, they can still ask for a variance, right, to build.
Yeah, I mean, I sent you the map, I drove by the house today. I mean, it's just a residential subdivision, why would we want to put a greenhouse up there? There were horses across the street, 2 horses, they had a small stable, it looked fine, I mean, that's all can be in conformance, it's not in conformance now. You know, it will be with the R, whatever it is, R1 or RE3. No issue there, but I mean, a greenhouse, a residential neighborhood, you know, a big greenhouse in your front yard, I'm sorry.
And it would be permitted under farm either.
Probably not, you know, that's, that was new to me tonight, they didn't say that. When I asked, is there anything that you want to do, or what is it?
Again, it's area under food, so it should be, again, restricted by, you know, the size of the lot and.
Right, yeah.
Restrictions.
I mean, I don't know if they have room in their rear yard, I'm not sure if that's a greenhouse they want to make, but anyway, that's enough.
Yes, thank you. So, I'd like to get, other input on what you'd like to do. So Chris, do you have a feeling what you'd like, in a sense, would you be willing to do a motion tonight, with some of these concerns? Or would you rather come back another time and hash through these things?
You know, I thought a lot about it, and I think at this point, I would be willing to put forth a motion, approve a motion to pass it along to the village board as is, with maybe something in the motion or some reflection on, these are some of the key items that maybe needs further discussion, because I think we have discussed this as a zoning commission very well. We've vetted a lot of things, and some things we've agreed upon, and some things where we've agreed upon unanimously, and some things we've agreed upon, maybe not unanimously, but we went with the majority. And so I think, you know, we could discuss some of those items again, like the license plates, and walk back and forth, but at the end of the day, I think we need to go with board to weigh in on some of these things, because ultimately they're the rule-makers for the village. So, you know, and I think to get them to weigh in on that, we need to move this forward.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, you kind of, the village board member just put his hand up.
I want to make sure you don't feel rushed, right? It's okay. If you take this, I mean, looking at our calendar, there might be other board members in the room for you. Looking at where we are, just logically going into the holidays, I don't think there's a rush. So if you guys want to take another round to go, if you're at an impasse, or for lack of a better term, and you want to present it that way, and then just package it, these are the things that we could not come in unanimity, or, you know, however, that's fine too, but don't feel rushed on our part.
I just don't want to keep spinning my wheels. If we're going to go over how to see if we place it.
Things came up.
Okay. Okay. Jim, do you have a reference?
I mean, submit it the way it is, with a list of concerns.
Okay.
And I think you may need a meeting to draft that list.
I've got 18 of them already, but I've heard it.
All right. So, yes, go, Mr. Carl, please.
I'd like to discuss it before, we just push it forward. And I know we've all heard the same comments, we've all heard the same points here, we've all done a great job of summarizing it, but I'd like to see that in writing before you agree to submit it.
So just to chime in on what your duties are as a commission, you're bound by the Illinois Municipal Code, specifically the section regarding the zoning commission. And you're required to have a public hearing, which you did tonight. You did close the public hearing at the public comment, and this is your time to discuss, of course. You know, prior to having the public hearing, you're supposed to have prepared a draft report and a draft copy of the ordinance. It doesn't really defer to a map, but we did that as well. So I would caution you on not continuing to keep meeting and discussing any significant changes, or really any report up, because you already had a public hearing today. So if there was some discussion, and you're obviously discussing what was commented on, or what questions that were asked, the comments were made, I would suggest that, because the final report and the final ordinance has to be sent to board vote for 30 days of public hearing, that you have Mr. Brown add to his report just a final section that indicates what happened this evening, the comments that were made, and how those issues were discussed previously, either at prior zoning commission meetings or what was discussed tonight, and send that to the vote board. You really have done your work since you've been meeting since January, and to continue to discuss the issues, which may then result in a change to what was presented to the public. I really wouldn't. But you can talk all into the night tonight if you'd like to. But I would definitely include what happened tonight.
At our last meeting, we talked about this, and we said that there may be comments that come out tonight that
this is where we reached a consensus, this is where we didn't reach a consensus, have that alongside the draft ordinance and report, and send that to the vote board. And then it's their chance to discuss it.
You also have an option of always.
Sorry, Derek, I got heard you comment.
I kind of feel like I'm in agreement with Mr. Gavarski that we need one more day to digest and kind of synopsis and recap everything we heard tonight, whether or not it changes anything, but at least have a chance to digest it, like you said. I'm not opposed to that.
Okay. Yeah, I just say, if you're not limited here, you can always call for another public hearing and all, so you're not necessarily limited to that 30-day deadline. If you say you revise things, and we're gonna have another public hearing for people to respond to that and all. So that's, you know, well, like how many public hearings did we do? I'm just saying, not just saying.
If so, that would be an entirely new public hearing, notice of publication, yes, to make that clear, not
I kind of feel, at least we have a majority that would say we can make a recommendation to the village board and but have an addendum with all of the issues that were brought up, the concerns that were brought up, and some of the things that we've addressed, and that consensus that we think is as a commission. And then that would give time to digest it. We then met at the next meeting in November to approve that, or unless we schedule a meeting prior to that.
Or continue this to a date certain.
Yes, well, the hearing's closed, but yeah. There's, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to wait.
Right.
And that's what I was gonna say, is we need to look at the village board's calendar of meetings, because if we have 30 days, like and obviously we need to be cognizant of their time, because you have some things to do too, but, you know, if it's the first and third, I'm not sure if it's gonna be the third Tuesday of November.
Yeah, what's next Wednesday? Is it, people have, we got a quorum for next Wednesday? I believe, I think.
Halloween.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Oh, they're probably 6. Thursday. 10:30. I'm available. I'm not available the 13th. So we're talking about
30th.
Yeah, he's not available or next month, so it would be better to do it so Mr. Question, you would be available. And this is, obviously things have come up, but you know, what do you think, Chris, you guys make a week of today? And Jim would make it, Terry would make it, okay. So, how about we, then make a motion, my suggestion, you make a motion to approve the tentative report with an addendum, that will be reviewed at next meeting, which is scheduled for October 30th. Is there anything else I'm legally missing on that? Just approve the draft, basically approve a forward report of the draft zoning ordinance and draft sport zoning map to the village board of trustees and recommend approval. Okay, well then we just have to go over it.
Basically, we're just supposed to table the motion to approve. Yeah, you see what I mean? No,
It's this way, it gives Jim a chance to fix the things on the map. And list out the 18 or 19 issues we were getting.
Yeah, I mean, the map was taken care of for the village board. I mean, that's
I thought we're supposed to be supplying a map that's been approved by this.
Right, so you make a motion.
When we make changes, that means we have to approve the changes.
No, you have a motion to approve the map as is with the 3 changes as discussed at the meeting.
Next Wednesday, next week.
No,
We're here now, but yeah, we just have those 3 changes that we talked about, is that right?
So I just to note, at the end of the tentative report, there is a section that relates, that talks about some other items for the board to consider. We have outdoor lighting, you know, the dark
audio, video, you know, I don't necessarily do it verbatim minutes, but it's, you know, I think the procedure.
Okay, so I'm hearing basically a consensus that we would adjourn till a week from today, and that what we would, in that meeting, we would basically have a motion to approve the tentative report as is with an addendum, with the concerns of the matters, and then discuss that, and then does that sound like a plan? Everybody agree? Okay.
Right.
Yes. Mark.
And you're not shy about sending your key points to Jim or to myself before 30. You're not shy about anything. Send them so we don't not include them.
But that's a little bit pressure on Jim, but you know, the sooner, obviously the sooner you can get, it's only a week away, so the sooner you can get something out, Jim, the people have time to review it and get their feedback, that'll help.
Yeah, you won't have that on the agenda.
Right. After we have, before we do that, the next meeting, which is not our normal scheduled meeting, then we'll be at Village Hall at our normal meeting place.
So do we need a motion to approve?
6:30.
It's not all right.
6:30.
Have a schedule or not? Next
Do we amend our schedule?
I don't think we have a regular schedule. We set the schedule yourself as a commission.
All right, so I'll tell you what, we're going to motion to adjourn